Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 74 of the Former Action Guys podcast, and I'm your host, Justin Kramer. And hey, sorry for the delay on a new audio episode, and well, I guess video too. I've been in school, so school started back up. You know, I'm taking 6 courses right now over here at San Diego State University, and now that I'm in about 2 weeks, I kind of got the rhythm down, and I've got some good podcasts scheduled. I got this one today, and then couple days from now, this week, we are doing another one with a Marine that got out and is now a reporter who has been traveling to some of these protests and getting some good video of those. So I'm pretty excited about what's coming up. So thanks for sticking with me. And yeah, this week I have on Leo Lozano. He is a Gulf War veteran. He is a OIF veteran. He was a fire support Marine. Retired from the Marine Corps, and then he joined the police force here in California, joined a police force here in California. We don't get into that. We just talk about his time at 1st ANGLICO, well, his time actually with 12th Marines and then 1st ANGLICO, and what he did in the Gulf War. He was part of the Battle for Khafji, the Battle of Khafji, however you want to say it, where his position, there was a recon, some ANGLICO Marines, recon Marines, some Navy SEALs, all had outposts along the border at the opening of the Gulf War, and were overrun with Iraqi armor by the 5th Brigade of the Iraqi armor. So he was in a position, where they had literally tanks chasing them. Ended up having to leave a lot of their gear behind, including radios and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting conversation. So I'm excited for it. Hope everybody will enjoy that. All right, so as always, make sure to subscribe on YouTube. I'm about to hit like 300 subscribers, which is cool because the YouTube page isn't that old. It's actually still pretty new compared to the podcast itself, which hit 1 year on August 1st. I never even mentioned it, but the podcast is just over a year old. Thank you to everybody especially people that's been here from the beginning, and all the new subscribers and stuff. Thank you. Make sure to share the word. If you're a new subscriber and you haven't already done it, go over to Apple Podcasts. They're really the only platform that allows reviews or has an ability to do reviews. So go over on Apple Podcasts, leave a review, let people know how the show is, help bump me up in the ratings a little bit. I can get back in that. See, I took a couple days off, and I'm not even in the top 100 anymore on the Apple Podcast documentary podcast. So help me out with that. Leave a review, tell your friends about it, share the word, and make sure to subscribe over on YouTube. And we will be doing some live ones. I'm getting all the technical stuff figured out for doing live broadcasts. So I'm using my YouTube University skills to figure this out. And once I get it, I've done it a couple times. There's some glitches there. I want to get it where it's real smooth before I do another one. So be on standby for that. So make sure to subscribe on YouTube. And as always, check out my website, jkramergraphics.com, and my Instagram at jkramergraphics and at Former Action Guys on Instagram. Hit me up there and enjoy the podcast. But I'm not sure why we started talking about that, but welcome to the podcast, dude.
Right on.
I know we've talked back and forth on Instagram a lot. I know you've put a couple other people on the show. You've hit me up about a couple other people to come on the show and stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day and coming on and getting your story out there. So for the audience that doesn't know you, that doesn't converse with you regularly like I do, you want to introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and you joined the Marine Corps. You want to tell us why you joined the Marine Corps?
Yeah, absolutely. So Leo Lozano, I'm a California native. I was born in East Los Angeles, no kidding, and then lived all over Southern California. Ended up in Bloomington in my high school years, between Bloomington and Fontana. So I was big into movies like Uncommon Valor back in the day, Southern Comfort, Rambo.
Southern Comfort, that's classic.
Yeah. So really, I had the military. I didn't have a real military influence. My dad was a reservist during Vietnam. He was actually in 08-11. He was a gun buddy.
Oh, really?
So he went out to Conan Palms every, whatever they did to shoot, but they're out of Pico Rivera. So I had a couple uncles in Vietnam. Had one of my grandfathers was did some of the Luzon. He did some amphibious landings and whatnot. So that was my background as far as knowing the military. But
did any of them ever talk about it, or was it something you just knew they did that was like a different life?
So my dad talked probably the most and did the least, which was hilarious, typical bullshitter. But my grandfather didn't talk to me too much about it until after I got back actually from Desert Storm, when we sat down and had some beers and discussed some things. And then My uncles, I knew one of them was fighting a bad conduct discharge out of Vietnam. He was a real screw up, and then the other one had some really honorable service over there. Did some good things, and he doesn't talk a whole lot about it. I just recently hit him up. He didn't even have a picture of him in uniform, so I sent him a couple from that I had from my grandmother's. I made copies of them back in the day, and him in Vietnam and stuff like that. So I sent them to him. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I did, but yeah, so not a whole lot. I mean, I did talk. I had buddies. I mean, like I said, I watched. I was war movies. Went out whenever we could, played BB gun wars. Just doing shit like that. And,
Yeah, that's exactly how me and my brother were. Like, I talk to people that talk about watching westerns and all that stuff, and I'm like, I don't
Right.
know. The only movies I watched as a kid, not only, but same thing. Growing up, it was like Midway, Bridge Too Far, like The Great Escape, stuff like that. So,
Yep.
and my dad was in the Army and then Army Reserves as well. So it's like, it was kind of not a surprise, I don't think, that, I ended up joining the military.
Yeah.
So do you think, like, did your family like bring the war movies to you, or did you seek them out on your own? Do you think you just naturally had that kind of?
Oh yeah, man. I'll be honest with you, man. I had anytime we went to the store. Remember back in the day, they made good Army men. They weren't the thin shit. They're the little green ones, but they were good ones.
Yep.
This guy up here, I don't know what the hell he was doing. He was really doing rifle PT. I thought he was trying to bayonet somebody, but yeah. So I'd get those. I'm telling you, up until 8th grade, I had just thousands of Army men. And I would just, it was silly to that point. You know what I mean? You're in 8th grade and stuff. Here I am listening to, Zeppelin and everything else, but I still got my Army men every now and then. So it was one of those things. And just building shit. I wasn't a historical guy. I didn't read a whole lot of history books or anything like that. I liked history in high school. I liked history all throughout school. But yeah, so the movies, I just found them. I mean, they were on regular TV, a lot of them back in the day. You didn't have to, I don't think we had a VHS for. I'm 53, so we're talking in the 80s. Yeah, so I'm sure VHSs were out by then. But,
by the 80s,
I don't remember
for sure.
having. Yeah, early 80s. When I enlisted in 84.
Okay.
On the delayed entry program. But yeah, I sought them out.
Okay. So what made you distinguish the Marine Corps as being different than the Army, and then finally deciding to join the Marine Corps?
So this is funny. Back in the day, the Army had a program. It was a 5-person buddy program, and all of us we had 5 guys: Frank, Tommy, Mike, Biff, and me. And no kidding, the guy's name was Biff. But
I was gonna say Biff, like Back to the Future.
Yeah, Biff Raoul.
That's funny.
I know he ain't listening, but so anyway, so we all said, hey, we're going to join the Army because we all got together. We used to drink together in high school, and we'd go out and do bullshit camping trips up in Idle Creek and whatnot. And so we said, hey, we're going to go down to the recruiter, and we're going to go into the buddy program. And then we're going to be go through the Rangers, and then we're going to be Special Forces. So, long story short, Biff joins before everybody goes in the Army. Mike graduates. I didn't graduate with my class, so I'll tell you that in a second. But so Mike goes in the Army. Frank doesn't join at all, and Tom, he ends up a heroin addict in the Navy and gets kicked out. So me, I talked to the recruiter. A recruiter came down right before the end of the school year, the 11th grade year, and that was when I was still going to school, like regular school. I wasn't kicked out yet in the other schools. Yeah, so this recruiter, black Vietnam guy, big old bald head, he was mass force recon, he was dual cool, had his, I was looking at his ribbons and I knew pretty much what they all were, and I'm like, this guy's badass. So there's only me and another guy sitting there talking to him. Nobody else went to talk to the Marines. So that summer comes around, we talked and whatnot, and the first thing he says is, "Are you a pussy?" It was hilarious. That was his introduction, but
very Marine recruiter like.
Right. Fast forward to the summer. So this is towards the end of the school year, and then now we're into summer. And I told my dad, I was 17. I said, "Hey, I want to go sign up. I'm going to go enlist today. If I don't enlist today, I'm not going to enlist." So it was a Saturday, and he took me down to the recruiter station in Montana, and here I am. Now the Marine Corps recruiter door is open, and the desk literally is across the doorway, looking into the Army recruiter doorway. So I'm knocking on the door in the Army, and there's nobody in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I turn around, and there he is. He looks at me, and he's like, points at me. He's like, Lozano. He remembered my name. And I was like,
Oh, that's cool.
and then he's like, what the hell are you doing over there, son? We had just talked probably, about a month ago before the school ended. He's like, get your ass in here and sit down. That's the way, I was like, oh, like, today I'm going to be a Marine. So, you know how we hear the stories, I almost joined the Marine Corps?
Yeah.
I almost joined the Army. So, yeah. And got me going, and then he set me in front of that little TV they used to have that they throw in the videos, and it's just this little pop-up TV, and you watch it, and it starts off with the guys, driving in a truck, the back of a truck, all cammied up, and then they get ambushed, and then it goes into the whole. It was pretty neat, man. So I was like, hell yeah, this is what I'm going to do. So I enlisted that day, signed the papers. A couple days later, I was down at August 2nd, I want to say it was, that I was down in LA at the map station to get physical and everything like that.
Yeah. Did you sign up for a specific job at that point, or were you open contract?
Okay, so I ended up open contract, but the thing is, they give you 3 things to pick. This is 84. Yeah. So now Mastar passed me off to another fork tongue guy. Beto Hernandez was a bitching dude later on. This great friend of the family's too. But he was, he talked. So he's like, hey, all right, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to do that. I want to do infantry stuff. And he's like, okay, well, we can get you into combat arms. And he goes, they have artillery and combat arms. They blow stuff up. And I'm like, hey, that sounds cool. And he's like, all right. And he's like, what was my other one? Because I told him I wanted recon. And he's like, well, you don't go right into recon. You got to be, but he didn't point me towards infantry either. Motor T was one of them. And artillery was one of them. Yeah, right. And you know Motor T. And I forgot what the other one was, but it wasn't. It was a combat arms, but it wasn't infantry. And I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. So basically, I went in open contract. Is what I ended up doing. I put those down, but I had open contract.
And you got picked for 0861. Was it 0861 then?
No. So no, you go through boot camp, right? When you get ready to get your MOS, they call you around, and they're reading out the names, and they're like, Lozano, 08, artillery. They didn't say 08 yet. They just said artillery. I'm like, awesome. I got artillery. And he's like, one of our DIs had lead sleds. And he's like, yeah, those guys jump out of airplanes, and they call in for fires. And I'm like, oh, awesome, man. That sounds bitchin'. I can't wait to get there. So me and a buddy of mine, this guy, we met in boot camp, and we ended up staying together through our first 3.5 years in the Marine Corps. Tony Orozco, but we ended up going to Fort Sill. So we meet it back at Fort Sill. We're roommates, and we get our orders, and it says 0844. I had no freaking clue what that was. But I was smart enough later on to figure out, hey, well, I have a brain because they wanted me in the FDC. At least I wasn't pulling a lanyard, So, yeah. So I ended up a 4. Yeah, right. Well, and they make you go down to the gun line back in the day, and that was like horrible, man, because you got harassed like those are big dumb motherfuckers, and they're strong. So
yeah,
I mean that lovingly. They're not all dumb, but
the gun line is a different world of animals.
Oh, that's it.
And each gun crew is like their own little. It's funny because of the rivalry even within the battery. It's not like unit to unit. It'll be like, hey, F you, gun 4, and like they'll start a fight between the guns. Yeah. So that's always fun.
But those guys. But I ended up a 4-4, did the Fort Sill thing. Had everybody goes to Fort Sill for. Well, if I was 18 now, because this is a year later. So I was I've stayed in the delayed entry program for a whole year, so I was kind of ahead of my peers in boot camp with knowledge and whatnot, and physically fit. But got PFC out of there because when you're on the delayed entry program for a year, you can get how many recruits you can actually have sign up. And then back then, I think you only needed 2, and then you got PFC, so I got that, which was great. Fort Sill did that. Came back got orders, and 29 Palms, California, to 511, which was awesome.
Yeah, showing up to 511. What was it like, getting to the fleet? Like, here we are. I'm done with boot camp, done with training, ready to go do my actual job. What was day one like for PFC Lozano? Right.
I'll be honest with you. I remember checking in at the battalion because I remember saying, hey, because they started putting us. We were with 511 back in the day was. They also had 510 there.
Mm-hmm.
So you had 4 109 batteries and you had 3 8-inch 110s. So it was all mechanized. So we go there and they start just throwing people, hey, you're here, you're here. It was like 7 or 8 of us. And I was like, oh, me and this Roscoe are on the buddy program. And I lied. I just, I said, hey, we're on the buddy program. So they put us both in November battery. But I don't remember actually checking into November battery that day. I just, it's so long ago. But I mean, there's some great things that, you get out. I love 29 Palms. I think artillery should be moved out there. It might not be a popular, saying amongst the Marine Corps right now, or popular opinion, but I don't think they belong in Pendleton. Pendleton has Pendleton has some great impact areas, but you're limited on your moving and your shooting because they're set up. Whereas in 29 Palms, we had free reign, man. We were you just ride around and all of a sudden you're doing a hip shoot. I mean, anywhere. And the impact areas are so vast out there, and then there's so many places to put a battery. So and then of course the OPs are they're a bitch to get up to.
Yeah, but we didn't even some of the times we didn't even use like the established OPs. Like I don't know the established OPs at 29 Palms. All the ones that I used when I was out there, the few times I went out there as a scout, we just made our own. It was like, hey, here's the impact area that we're going to be shooting into. Find an OP where you can observe it. Climb that mountain. It was like one of those, like, hey guys, we're going to patrol up and then we're going to set up there. So it was better, I think, training like that. But I know what you're saying. How 29 Palms has it's such a huge area, such a huge maneuver area and stuff like that. Have you ever done any training out in Camp Lejeune?
No, never stationed out there, man. I was fortunate. Well, I say fortunate, but I stayed on the West Coast with the exception of a year rotation into Camp Foster in Okinawa and then another UDP out there. But aside from that, I was either 29 Palms, Camp Pendleton, or
if you ever did artillery at Camp Lejeune, you would think that Camp Pendleton is like one of the greatest ranges of all time. Because Camp Lejeune is like 3 towers. There's 3 towers. OP, it's like OP 3, 4, and 5, I think, are what people use. And if you're not on one of those towers, you can't really do call for fire because it's so flat. You literally have to climb up the tower just to see the impact area. And after you're there for like 2 or 3 years and you've hit the same targets over and over, and from what I understand, I haven't been in Camp Lejeune since December of 2013. Pretty sure they've opened up a new impact area and stuff like that, but it has nothing on going up to like MFA 7, Case Springs. I'm sure you're familiar with Case Springs. Like going up there and looking down on the impact area is, I mean, I always told my guys, I was like, we're so spoiled out here, man. And my old CO or XO, Lieutenant Colonel Sims, who was with me at 10th Marines as a major, came out to 1st ANGLICO to be the CO. And I remember him coming up to the OP to the first time up in Case Springs and looked over at me. He's like, Kramer? He's like, can you believe this fucking impact area? He's like, we would love to have had something like that in Lejeune. And I'm like, yeah, man. Like, this is pretty nice. This is legit. But you're right, though. 29 Palms, I mean, you can't really ask for a better training area. And it's a double-edged sword, It's a great training area, but for the guys that are stationed in 29 Palms, because it's a great training area and they're right there, they're always the ones that get tasked with like supporting other training and stuff like that, or they're always out and they spend a lot more time in the field than I think most of the other Marines do. So
yeah, believe it or not, you hit it on the head there because our first full year, I remember Colonel Carlucci had us up on, he would out of battalion. He's like, we just passed 200 and something days in the field because we supported a lot of CAXs out there. And this was back in the day, so it was awesome though. We had the 109s, but and then you had what was before the 19 or 8? I know we had 114s. They called the pig, those chrome barrels that were short. Yeah, the pigs. But I know they had a towed, and it might have been. I know we had 105s out there. They were towed. Yeah. So, but we were out. It was just awesome. I mean, because 511, and you hear a battalion shoot seven batteries. It's basically almost, what is that? Almost a regiment. Yeah. If you really think about it, I mean, that's a good, that's a lot of rounds in those impact areas. And you could shoot back in the day. You could shoot the DPICM out there. They still, I don't know if they still do it or not. But
I don't know anyone else that's got to do it. My team, when I was out there for EMV in 2011, I think maybe it was 2010 or 2011, one or the other. They told me, they're like, hey Kramer, split the team in half. The lieutenant's going to take half the team over here, and you're going to take the other half over here. And he's going to go shoot wrap rounds, and you're going to go shoot DPICM. And I was like, sick. I was like, all right, cool, And I haven't met anyone else, or I never met while I was in the fleet. I never met anyone else that had the opportunity to shoot DPICM. I was like, this is sick that we got to do this. And there's like one grid square, and up in the mountains that's like basically impossible to get to by vehicle, and like very hard to get to on foot. Where they'll let you shoot it, and that's one of the places where they're like, hey, here's where the impact area is, find an OP. And it ended up us climbing these huge hills to get up to where we could see it. It was cool though. But DPICM, yeah, for sure. They can definitely shoot out there still.
But you learned your job out there too. I mean,
100%.
Because you were out there so long. And back in our day, it wasn't they're AFHs now or whatnot, but we had this little system called Bucks. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're familiar. It was a backup computer system, but you had two horizontal in the FDC. You had the two horizontal control guys. I believe they were both on charts, so they called them charts and darts. So you were checking each other's with your azimuth, and they went to the vertical guy who actually got the elevation, I believe, and then he passed it off to the Bucks guys, and there was two Bucks guys. And we're on the back of a 5-ton with this plywood that's stacked, 8 feet. The boxes do this shit when you're driving, but they're doing that. They're getting double checked on each other, and then you got a guy over them, the chief, and then you have the fire direction officer, the FDO.
Yeah.
Before you went down to the gun line, and then we didn't even have DCTs at that time. I mean, this was 85 through 88, so I'm not sure when DCTs hit the fleet for the.
What are the DCTs? Are those the little tablets that they were using to calculate, the little handhelds?
Right. Well, they would go down to the gun line. It can go straight down to the guns.
Oh, gotcha.
It was basically part of your comm, but it was kind of trying to limit your voice transmission, I believe.
Was this before the 777? Was this on the 9 or 8?
Oh yeah. Oh no, this was on the 109s we had.
Oh.
It was just I don't know. I'm sure they had a DCT terminal too. I want to say, the DCT went over the 77, so that's the way it communicated over a radio. It wasn't a hard line. It wasn't a wire.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So. No, man, so when I didn't get into artillery. I was a lap mover. I was motor T for the first 3 years. You already know that, but I didn't get into artillery till 2009, and at that time, they were just starting, or they were phasing out the 777 at that point. Like, there were still 9 or 8s for a little bit after that, but they were phasing that out. And the 777, the whole thing about that was supposed to be like, I can do a call for fire from the OP with my strike link, and it can go straight to this individual gun that's going to be shooting that mission. And
awesome.
And there's no voice comms required at any point. And we obviously never did that. Like, that was something it was like always working towards. And I think we did do some missions. There was never any that we did with zero voice comm, just because I don't think any CO was going to sign off on that as a safety thing. I think the first time they actually did that from observer to the gun with zero comm, they did out at Fort Sill. And it was actually a gun crew of all master sergeants and master guns that work out at Fort Sill, and it was a whole thing. But yeah, the whole, what you're talking about, speeding up the transmission and keeping your comms covered. Yeah, that's something that's just kind of, I guess that's the evolution of it. I saw the far end of it and it's continuing now. I'm sure it's better than it was a couple years ago when I was doing it, but we weren't big fans of it. I can see the use of how we're doing digital fires and stuff like that. I see it, but I just don't think we were there yet. And I also thought that it made our gun crews not as good at doing manual shooting. And I always, as a person that thinks about stuff like that, I'm like, what happens if we get an EMP or something, like digital fucks up? Can these guys still, and when you see guys do digital gunnery constantly, and then they try to go do, manual gunnery, it takes them a long time, and there's a lot of issues that they got to bust the rust because they're so used to the digital stuff now. So, and then on your point that 29 Palms is where you guys would get all your training, and that's where you kind of felt like you were learning your job. for us on the East Coast, that's what Bragg was. We would go to Bragg twice a year for 1 month apiece, in March and in October. And then the whole regiment would come out, what all guns they could get together and stuff like that. And if you hear a noise, they're doing construction outside, so there's a little bit of background noise. I apologize. But the same thing, though, we would take scouts out there, and it was kind of like if you were a junior scout, you kind of didn't get any respect, or no one really trusted you until we saw you go to Bragg and spend 30 days in the field and see, can he pick up his job, can he learn new things, and can he kind of take care of himself in the field. And then coming from Bragg, you were either part of the team or you were part of the team, but you were kind of like the dude that no one really trusted, and that's just kind of how it is. I'm sure I'm sure it was the same way back in the 80s as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, the cool thing was with me is I kind of outgrew FDC. I really didn't like it. I mean, outgrew it in the sense that you're in the back of a big ass truck. It's just a shitty ride the whole way. And then you're stuck in there. You're not doing a whole lot. So I'd always volunteer for like, hey, they need somebody to go dig a fighting hole and set up our perimeter security. Send me. I didn't have any artillery MCIs back in the day. They were all the infantry ones, and I still got some too. So really cool. So I was kind of wanting to do that stuff. So and then I became the advanced party driver, which was cool because you go out and you go set up a gun, with your CO or the XO, whoever's going out. Then I was driving around an old Gamma Ghost, those old 6-wheelers, which were pretty cool back in the day. A lot of shit, but and then I started driving for my XO, and in the XO, JT Ambrosi, he's out now. He's a bitching dude, but he's like, hey, you want to learn how to call for fire? I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. So we go up on the hill, and that's where we started. He started having me call for fires out there. So I was doing that on top of the FDC. Whenever I drive out with him, I'd go back I was taking advantage of it, being able to, if he asked me to go, hell yeah, I'm going to go out on the hill. Mm-hmm. And then right before I rotated out to Okinawa, I was like, our last big op. I don't think I spent day one in the FDC. I was like, I'll be our security for the whole time. And they had new guys coming in anyway. So they're like, yeah, hey, Lozano, go do it. So I'm just out there, Lance Corporal Lozano, in my own fighting hole, just having, not doing shit, having fun.
Yeah.
Not stuck in it. Not, going out and you have to do your walks and patrol, not a patrol so much, but like a security patrol around the perimeter and come back and you're fighting hole. That was, I just look forward to that, man. It was a good time.
So lap moving, what made you decide, what was like the final, like, all right, I'm going to switch jobs in?
Well, so I went to Okinawa, and have you been to Okinawa?
No, man, never made it out there.
The impact area, it was like a postage stamp, and we only went out. I was there for a year. We went out once to shoot in it. We did other training, but once, like a battery shoot. I don't even think it was the battalion because I was with 412, Lima 412, and you get out there and you're facing protesters. This was in '88. So there's protesters out there, Marines, they didn't want us on the island or blowing stuff up. And then it started raining to the point where we couldn't, and I always say artillery, an 0811 is the all-weather weapon. Because that guy can stay out in that rain and we can get rounds downrange. But it just was so bad we didn't even shoot. And we were loading back up ammo. We had to go and help the gun lines load back up the ammo. And I dropped a freaking WP round on smashed my finger, and I was like, that was it, man. I was like, I'm done with this battery bullshit. So, and I was coming up for re-enlistment, and we found out that my other buddy, Kilo, his what were they called back in the day? What are they called, the 0848s? Are they ops chiefs?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. So the ops chief was going to become, Gunny Terrio was going to become our monitor. And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to re-enlist as an 0861. Oh, but before, so you stand duty, you stand like a regimental duty and whatnot. And I'm corporal now, and I'm like seeing guys walk around with wings up at the 12th Marines Regiment. I'm like, so I'm asking them, hey, what's up with the wings? Because they're 0861s. And they're like, yeah, we're in Anglico. I was like, Anglico, what's that? So I started asking around, hey, Anglico. And then my buddy, Tim Berry, became my son's godfather. He's like, dude, we're going to go to Anglico. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to Anglico. So Gunny Terrio said, yeah, I'll make sure it happens. And I had a lieutenant at the time who I ended up he was my XO. He re-enlisted me, Lieutenant Kurt Lang, who became a colonel and retired, but good dude. And he ended up being at Anglico later on, too. So it was pretty neat. But so I ended up re-enlisting in Okinawa. I rotated back, went back to Fort Steele. It's a whole different thing when you're a corporal vice PFC at Fort Sill. A little more freedom, out there and stuff like that. So
yeah,
went there. Went down to Naval Gunfire School at Coronado, which was awesome.
Yep, can't be mad about that.
No, I got me a sweet 86 Ford Escort, man. It was just, dude, I had the stupidest car there was, and I paid like twice as much for it. I was actually like that PFC hey, I got money, here's my $200 paycheck. Well, yeah, we can work with that.
We'll hook you up, buddy.
Yeah. So I ended up, got me a nice car there. I joke about the hatchback, but then go through Naval Gunfire School there, go out to the island, which I loved going out to the island back. I loved it in English.
It's got to be the best range. To me, that's my favorite range to go to.
Well, it's away from everything, and you usually went out. We didn't have an officer. We might have a no-glow, but the no-glow would drive back up to the what was that airfield all the way up at the north end of the island, and I think that's north end, and we're in the south end. And that palace back in the day we called it a palace because it had bunk beds in there, showers. They brought in a cook. They brought in a cook that would stay there. He would stay there as long as we were. So we had great breakfast. I think breakfast and dinner were made, and then MREs. But so we did that. And then I knew I wanted to keep going back there. So we graduated. And interrupt me if I'm talking too much. But
no. I was going to say that building's condemned now. They don't even. I stayed in there when I went through MOS school. They cram you all in, the whole class, and no chefs though. They didn't bring out anybody to cook for us. But I think it slowly began to become condemned because of the water that's out there, and just because it's a concrete bunker on the edge of an island in the middle of the ocean. So it's probably got wear and tear on it from the salt water in the air and shit like that. But what a great place to go. And, they're not even – they recently – I don't know if they've made the change yet or if they're getting ready to, but they're no longer going to send guys to Coronado for Naval Gunfire School. They're just going to learn it at Fort Sill. And I'm like, what a horrible thing. Because you're right, man. Fort Sill is a junior Marine. It sucks. I'm so glad I went there as a sergeant. I was a sergeant when I went out there for MOS school because I was a lap mover. And – I was just like, some of the shit that they would do and how they would treat some of the junior Marines, like the basic students. I'm like, dude, like, come on, man. You won't even let the dude carry a pocket knife. I saw a kid I think he ended up getting I don't think he got NJP'd, but I know he at least got a page 11 for even having a pocket knife on him because they weren't allowed to have them. They weren't allowed to eat in their rooms. They weren't allowed to have TVs in their rooms. Like, it was like prison for those dudes. They had to march to and from chow together, shit like that. So Fort Sill, it's tough out there for those guys.
But we qualified the ships too, though.
That
was another reason for us to go out there.
Same for us, but that's why the no-glows would come out from EWTG PAC, Expeditionary Warfare Training Group Pacific. They'd come out and certify the ships for their naval surface fire support skills. However, I don't think the priority is on that anymore, and I think that's one of like 8 skills that they have to like maintain, and that's like one of the lower ends. I think when they do call for fire for guys out, the naval surface fire support call for fire out on San Clemente, that's probably the only time that ship even does a call for fire in a year, probably. And I could be wrong. Again, I'm out of the game. It's been a couple years. But seeing that they're moving the students away from there because they said they're not even getting enough ship support to support the students. Like, they're sending classes out to San Clemente Island, and then they're not even getting to do any call for fire because the ships either don't show up or they break down. The firing mechanism breaks or something like that just because they don't train to it, But, yeah, man. No longer doing that.
Wasted a lot of rounds out there dropping them short just to watch the surf bursts. And,
oh, yeah. I almost got hit by shrapnel from one of those because apparently if it hits the water, the shrapnel flies farther than it normally would.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
So I graduate, and the day we graduate, it's, probably noonish. So I think it's like 3 o'clock, 1500 in Quantico, right? So I get orders, and my buddy Tim, he's got Anglico on it, and another guy had Anglico on it, and I was like, "Fuck, I got some Victor." It says code Victor, like a Victor unit. And I knew about, hey, going to a Victor unit, and then I think it was 311, and I'm looking at my orders, and I'm like telling the naval gunfire guy, "Hey, this is wrong. I'm supposed to be going to Anglico." He's like, "Nah, your orders are, hey, Corporal, your orders are yours." I'm like, "No, I'm telling you, I know Gunny Terrio." He said so. finally, like, hey, all right, Corporal, we'll fucking call your monitors. So they called the monitor, and Gunny Terry was like, oh, yeah, Lozano's going to ANGLICO. And I was like, thank God. Because if we would have graduated later that day, and they would have been closed, or it was a Friday, hell, I was happy he was there. And I got in, you know, and then that was because it could have went a whole different way.
No, for sure. That's a good example. I've brought it up on the show a few times. That's a good example of someone taking their own destiny into their hands. Like if you would have just been like, well, I guess that's the way it is. That's what he said. You know, that's what so-and-so's telling me, that this is my orders now, rather than like actually, hey, pushing back a little bit and kind of being like, this is how it's, you know, that's exactly what I try to tell people to do. Like, don't just ride the wave and expect like good things to happen. At some point you have to take the risk or the chance of like pushing back a little bit or asking the question to get, you know, to further you. So because that would have completely changed your whole career like trajectory, you know, like
it very well could have. It would have definitely for that 4 years, and of course through Desert Storm. But yeah, it was I got lucky, and you were just a caveat on that, just to go on to what the first sergeant said and the CO said about. What do we do a lot of? We always tell people, especially like when they go to boot camp, don't volunteer for anything. Yeah. Don't volunteer. But the problem is, if you don't volunteer, sometimes you're not going to open up those doorways that you're talking about, that you have talked about. So I'm all about it, man. I was back in the day. I mean, granted, now I knew there's going to be shit details, but it's the luck of the draw. So, but you know, you volunteer, next thing you know, you're in a school. You know, that's not that a lot of people don't get to go to. You know, we had a lot of schools back in the day, a lot of really cool schools. But yeah, so anyway, so it ended up at First Anglico, man. Checked in there, and we drove up. That was Memorial Day weekend. Went down to, so they were on a 96, so we didn't have to come back in and check in until Monday or Tuesday, however that worked out. So we ended up going down to San Miguel Beach and by just north of Ensenada, and it was back in the day when you can ride in the back of a truck. We're on, you know, beer in the freeway kind of thing. So
really?
Had a blast down there, and came back up to Anglico and got our asses smoked the first day we were back. So
when you got to Anglico, were they in Del Mar at that time, or were they out in Flores? So they were still in Del Mar? This is May of '89. So yeah, we were in Del Mar. We were right across the street. I think back in the day that was NCO school, and then it turned into the corporal's course. But before that, I mean, we had our Green Monsters. We called it the Green Monster, but basically it was an old barracks that we used for all of our team offices. And they were just behind that. So a little walk, but the company CP was right there in that parking lot. It's no longer there anymore. We had a lateral drift apparatus, the thing that goes across the sand that you hold onto and drop. And we had a swing landing trainer, like a 15-foot tower you jump off of. It was really neat, man. It was just it was a good place, actually. Yeah. Were you, when you got there, and were you, well, first off, for people that don't know, Del Mar is probably, now I think that's where all the MU and the headquarters, there's a lot of headquarters, like MEF level headquarters and stuff out there. But if you were out there with like a unit like that, what a great place to be stationed, right? You can.
Oh yeah.
When I was down there with the MU, we would walk down to the beach or drive down to the beach and grab a burrito from the burrito stand that's on the beach, sit there and have lunch, like watching the surfers right there and stuff. Like, it's hard to complain about that spot.
No, you got it. But now, back in our day, there wasn't. Now, when I say our day, but it was '89. There wasn't a whole lot on the beach. Like I've been out there since, and it's bitching what they.
It's a resort now.
Yeah, back in the day, you rented trailers. They were like double wides, and you got shit faced out on the beach. I mean, you brought your stuff out. I don't even remember if we had the PX down there for a while. I could probably ask my wife, because we used to go down there and like 4th of July's or for holiday stuff like that, or just team get-togethers. But we'd always bring our shit, our beer and everything down there.
Yeah,
you and your food down there. But it was it was the choice. Actually, it was the choice spot, I think, on Pendleton. For me,
it had to have been for sure. It had to have been.
Well, it was us, Force, the schools. You had, the Corpsman School was there.
Yep. Still there, FMTV.
The AAV guys' schools, their schools there.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, I thought there was a motor transport school there too, but I know Motor T is taught in. I think it's taught in Leonard Wood, right?
You had driver schools at Fort Leonard Wood, and then the mechanics go to Camp Johnson.
what they have there? They had something else, but LSB was down there. So I mean, it was a smaller camp at the time too, so it was really nice. And we had some decent barracks. My barracks is still there.
Oh, that's cool. Now coming to Anglico, what were your expectations before you got there, and were they met, do you think?
I don't know. The only really expectation I had was I was going to be a port observer jumping out of airplanes. I mean, I didn't put a whole lot, you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to this unit, and this is what we're going to get to do, and you don't get to do that in any other unit in the Marine Corps. So I was like, this is going to be cool. And but I found out it was a lot more in depth, with fire support, communication skills, because you get there and right away you start hearing this thing called ABC. Mm-hmm. And it's ABC, and it's the Anglico base, of course. And you're like, but the whole time you're in formation, you're looking over at the jump pit, the lateral drift, at the mechanisms for jumping that you go to before you. It's called junior jump school, or junior jump course. So you'd watch, everybody's paying attention to that. Nobody really gave a shit about ABC. What's ABC? And then all of a sudden you're in ABC, and then I would say my expectations, to answer the question, were met and exceeded. I mean, because you learn comm. You learn damn near, you learn a lot of things in ABC. You cross train. Our honor grad was a motor T guy, Corporal John Calhoun, but he retired as a sergeant major. But this is the guy I was trying to get on here too. He's got a great story, but over 10 years there, straight.
So, what a lucky guy, right?
Yeah, grand old man of the Marine Corps, Anglico anyway. So. Yeah, but you go to ABC, and then you find out that it's a whole lot more than just jumping out of airplanes and calling for fire. You learn, patrolling. You learn, field skills that are, guys today are still using them that were always 6-1s that became better communicators than some comm guys. Yeah.
That's I think that's the legacy of Anglico, is the ability to get comm up. You know what I'm saying? Like, the fire support men are all professionals and are all great. All the JTACs, for the most part, are all great. And even the ones that, like, when being at Anglico, I'd look at one and be like, this guy's not that great. Could probably hold his own pretty well amongst JTACs in the fleet, just because at Anglico you're getting so much air and so much practice all the time. Even your bad guys aren't really that bad, but
that's a good point.
Yeah, and I think also, having been at 10th Marines, and we had obviously radio operators that were part of the battalion liaison team and stuff like that, and we would cross train with them. We would do some comm stuff. We would learn how to set up the OE 254, the antenna, and the 119 and the 117 a little bit. But it wasn't like at Anglico where it was like, all right, we got nothing going on. Okay, let's sit down and we're going to go over how to load crypto into the 117 and then do that 20 times until everybody gets it. And then turn around, okay, comm guys, we're going to go do call for fire. Hey, so-and-so, radio operator, you are going to JFO school, which I know you guys didn't have JFO school then.
No.
But now it's like, hey, doesn't matter that you're a radio operator. We think you're good enough. You're going to go now and learn how to do call for fire, like get certified to, talk to air and stuff like that. And not many units do that cross training, medical training. I don't know how it was then. I know it's gotten, obviously, unfortunately, the wars have taught us a lot about medical treatment of, casualties and stuff like that. And so that's a good and bad thing, I guess. But yeah, man, just the emphasis on medical training, communications training, and then just being good at being a good forward observer. I didn't really see it too many places like I did at Anglico.
Well, Anglico too breeds, and this is my opinion, but it breeds the alpha in our MOSs. Because back in the day, what I mean by that is you had everybody trying to you're trying to get to Anglico because you want to be. You felt like you're special. I always go back to that jumping out of airplanes. But shoot, the schools they were sending guys to: Sears School, Pathfinder School, Jumpmaster School, Ranger guy. We had guys going to Ranger School coming back as honor grads and stuff like that. So it really built. I think it built up our character too. I mean, there's a lot of egos running around there, and you had to do better than the other guy. So it's kind of like when you're talking about the gun sections back. And they gave us a lot of. Like I was a corporal. I'll be honest with you. We didn't have laser range safety cards back in the day. We went up to OP Alpha, and you got a corporal on there, on the mule, and maybe one on the hooks, and he's being watched by that. We didn't call them JTACs either. Forward air controllers, I believe, is facts, right? Went to TCP school. So you're up there, they're just watching you, and you're calling. You're controlling, doing your 9-line, and they're really not even getting involved. They're just listening to you. When everything's said and done, it's like, hey, okay, yeah, here's what you could have did. Talk them on better, or could have gave a better description, or did you look at the cone for the which is important because that plays a factor later on with that LVRM.
The laser safety basket.
The laser, that thing. So but anyway, guys, so we were out there just running, and it gave us a lot of confidence in ourselves. I mean, because you're out there and our team, I mean, we had a fix back in the day. They had usually a lieutenant who was either an 0802 or an 0311. And then sometimes you might end up with a FAC. I've ended up with a FAC as well. He was a Harrier pilot, so he was my FIC when we got back for just a short time before I went to ABC. But we got to do so much stuff, so you felt special.
Yeah,
that makes sense. And then
no, go ahead.
No, I mean, and then but it kind of breeds a certain animosity too, I think too, because I'll be honest with you, I did not like artillery. After that, I never wanted to go back to a battery.
Yeah,
I wanted.
That's how a lot of guys are. Yeah, that's how a lot of guys are. It's so what my take on it is, one, when I got to ANGLICO, you have a lot of guys that pretend like they're some kind of special operations dudes, like they have it in their head that they're in this unit, so now they're somehow like automatically better, than the average Marine or whatever. And and then that's not everybody. And I think a lot of those guys are riding on the coattails of guys that had come before. And we have pictures in the Eagle's Nest of dudes working with like SEAL teams and dudes working with like SF teams, stuff like that. Like there are a lot of guys that have done a lot of legit stuff, and which is great, and that's a great legacy that we have and stuff like that. And I think there's a lot of guys that come there with an ego that they haven't earned. You know what I'm saying? Like they come in and they're like, well, I'm part of the unit, so I'm now special. Here's my black hoodie, and look at me. And it becomes in name only. Like they don't want to learn. They refuse to learn like the small details of their job and stuff like that. And you can tell who the gray man is, who kind of wants to hang back when we're doing, call for fire or working cast on the hill. And you look back at Sergeant so-and-so and you're like, hey, bro, get on the hooks, and the guy that's been talking shit about how cool he is all the time and now he sucks. It's like, you can't just come in here and live off the name, man. You got to come in here and do the training and do the stuff. And which is, most of the people do that. I think most of the people are pretty humble and come in and do what they're supposed to do, but there's other guys that don't. And I will say ANGLICO also, what you were saying, that whole kind of alpha mentality comes from, in my opinion, the fact that ANGLICO is all small teams. You're all teams less than 20 people. There's anywhere from 4 to 6 of those teams on deck. So there's only a couple teams, and the other people that are at the unit are all supporting you. And so that automatically, I think these small teams that are given a lot of flexibility by the command, like my team, we came up with all of our own training. There was very little company level training pushed down to us. It was all like, hey, here's what we want to do. Are we good? And they just give us the thumbs up. And you don't get that at a lot of ARTI units and stuff like that. And then schooling wise, that's the shitty part about being an 0861 or a forward observer, is that you're the bastard child of the artillery battalion, because they only care about the guns, they only care about the batteries. So that's the focus of training. So trying to convince a battalion commander or an OPSO to send one of your guys to like Mountain Calm, he doesn't see the benefit, because you're not going to deploy with the battalion. You're going to get attached to an infantry unit and go deploy with them, and that training you received is going to help them out. That's how they're looking at it. Right. And so it's sometimes hard to get them to pay for some kind of training or justify that type of training. But then when you get attached to the infantry unit and you still need that training, they're like, why would we pay for some attachment to go to some training? Like, you're an attachment. You should already know this stuff. So you're like the bastard child of all these worlds. And at ANGLICO, it was like almost any school I think I ever asked to send my guys to, I don't think I was ever told no. I think, there was nothing that was outside of the realm that I can think of. Obviously we tried to stay within our own like sphere of influence of like, fire support specific stuff. But we sent guys to SEER. Half my team was jump qualified, even though ANGLICO no longer has a jump mission. Like half the team was jump qualified, stuff like that. So that's part of the reason that people at ANGLICO get kind of a big head, is because and that's, rightfully so, I guess, somewhat, is because they're given that opportunity to be the backbone of the Marine Corps, that small unit leader. Like a corporal is an important position at ANGLICO.
Absolutely.
Like if you're a corporal or a sergeant and you're not like actively like shaping your team and stuff like that, then you're kind of, what are you doing? I think there's a lot of responsibility given to those guys, and it reflects. I think a lot of guys appreciate it, and just appreciate being treated like an adult rather than an artillery unit. It's like, hey, sergeants, get in formation with everyone else, and we're just going to yell at you arbitrarily because someone did something wrong in the barracks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, see, I didn't deal with, and you were a liaison chief, then I take it at the battalion level at one time or another, right?
Yeah, I was the assistant chief at 210, and then I was the battalion chief for 3-6 for that deployment.
See, I did the battery. Later on, I'll talk about it. But I was with a battery after this. I had to go back, and I was the liaison chief for the battery. And then you get bastardized. You get sent out to. It was with 1-4, but we had a really good relationship with our weapons platoon commander and weapons platoon sergeant. So they really treated us well. The liaison team. We didn't get really fucked with. He let me do my individual training with my guys because I kind of kept that small unit mentality that I learned at ANGLICO. So it's like, but ANGLICO, I mean. Yeah, they allowed you to do a lot of things, and you got to do things that a lot of other people didn't. And then, of course, after we got back from Desert Storm, then it suddenly changed on us. We had to go get a laser range safety card. We couldn't control cast without a TAC qualified fact. So TACP qualified fact, so you couldn't do like your team leaders and whatnot. Couldn't just take you out there and go, hey, we're going to go Zulu today. You know what I'm saying? It was this. They started putting a lot more regulations on it.
So were you guys at that time only the facts? So only the officers, the pilots were controlling? None of the enlisted guys were controlling?
No. They were the only ones qualified. They were the only ones that got sent to school.
Yeah. That's what I mean is qualified to control.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, so a big deal with that. A guy named John Dillard, and I know you've heard his name, Big John. Yesterday was his 2-year anniversary of passing, but he was big on trying to get us, because our mission was, well, I've heard you mention it too, I think, about ROMADs. Mm-hmm. Okay, so back in the day, we only supported the Army and basically in foreign nations, their armies. We didn't, so that's why the jump mission was a big deal, because we did jump. I mean, I've jumped with the 82nd. A lot of guys jump with the Rangers. They'll jump with, a bunch of other guys who you got to insert. But then we've never worked with Marines. You never, you know what I mean? You're always out there with somebody else. You're always, I forgot where I was going with this.
Real quick for the people that don't know, the ANGLICO mission there is to provide fire support personnel to anyone that may be adjacent to the MAGTF. So if you're like, let's look at it right now in Afghanistan. They have the Georgian military out there. The Georgian, the old Russian country, is out there, and they have ANGLICO Marines that are attached to them because they are operating in an area next to the Marine Corps, next to American fire support assets, but they don't have the capabilities to talk to American fire support assets.
Right.
And that's where ANGLICO comes in. That's where they come in and liaise and provide that, equipment and professional knowledge to be able to do that. And it not only works with foreign militaries, but like with the Army and stuff like that, because the way they conduct call for fire and stuff is similar, but there's obviously nuances of it that are different between the Army and Marine Corps.
Right. To get back to the, I lost I'm old, man, so bear with me.
You're not that old.
No, but like with regards to having enlisted guys controlling, so what we would do is we would control, but we had to be under their watchful eye, right? Mm-hmm. But then you go to Hunter Liggett or something, you're supporting, back in the day it was 7th ID, they're no longer with us. I think 7th ID's been disbanded, but they had a ROMAD team out there. Mm-hmm. And, the guys, they're controlling air. They're doing their best. They control air. I think they had a hard time, but, I think it was A-10s. It was after we came back. But, I mean, at the end of the day, so we're watching all this going on, and we know what we did. So, because when we went to Desert Storm, all bets were off as far as we all controlled air.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like necessarily when an officer might have been. Officers were used. We have great officers too in ANGLICO. A lot of great officers there, and a lot of great enlisted. But they would, maybe they'd be off the tower, or maybe they'd be off the OP, and you got a section that just came back from DAS getting dropped. So you're like, okay, we'll run them. What do you guys got? then, they'll come up if they, you're controlling the air. You already had predetermined targets because you'd been out there for a while. So it's like, yep, run it, give him BDA, and then Lieutenant, you may wake him up in his sleep when the bombs are going off, or, or he may be up there with you. But it was, we got to control it. So Top Dillard saw that. We all saw it. And he was just a really big proponent of getting guys like you guys, JTAC, involved. And, because I've been to TACP school twice. Not because
really?
I failed. No, not because I failed. I passed both times. It was different times in my career. They sent me back. I went first with First ANGLICO, and then I went back with when I was I&I in Third ANGLICO. And we thought we were actually going to be getting live controls like Qual, and they still did the same thing from the second class that they did in the first class. They said no, we're not. The enlisted aren't doing. They're not going out to where they. I don't know if they went to 29 Palms or Chocolate Mountain or wherever they do qualify, but they said no, you guys won't be going. You'll be doing this. The simulation where they're doing on the terrain model and whatnot, controlling that way. But everybody else, that the officers were going out to, so they still hadn't grasped that. They enlisted MOS yet, and then it's obviously evolved to what's awesome. I wish I'd have known I probably would have stayed in instead of retiring.
Yeah, the way it's evolved now, so for those that don't know, like before it was only officers, it was only the FACs, the forward air controllers, so pilots that are on their ground tour that come to be a trained observer for 2 years and they go back to the cockpit. So that's what it initially was. And then guys like John Dillard, who I guess I just found out too at First ANGLICO, Lieutenant Colonel David Armstrong, who's been on the show a couple times, old First ANGLICO guy. He this weekend he was at First ANGLICO and dropped off the First ANGLICO Subunit 1 sign from Vietnam. That he talks about it on the podcast on one of the episodes. I think the latest one he was on, where that sign almost got tossed in the trash when they were moving the CP. I think from Del Mar out to Los Flores. And he saved it, and he's had it for years, and he took it over to First ANGLICO and put it up in the Eagle's Nest this last week. And another thing, while I was looking through the pictures, and he also said that there was a room when you walk into the Eagle's Nest to the left. I don't know. Have you ever been there? Have you been to the Eagle's Nest?
Yeah, I was just there last year for retirement.
That room, when you walk into the left, there was like a room to the left that they called like the staff NCO and officers room. And then across from it was like kind of a game room kind of deal. That room off to the left, they changed it from that to the John Dillard room. So they actually have that room there dedicated to John Dillard. He was the, we've talked about him on the show a couple times, but he was at ANGLICO. There's a plaque in the CP right outside the duty hut that he was the first person awarded the, what do they call it? The Wild Eagle Award, for his contributions to artillery and stuff like that. And it kind of shifted how they gave that out in the future. But he definitely he left a legacy. He's definitely he's the guy that definitely forwarded a lot of thoughts and ideas, especially for the enlisted personnel. And what happened was it shifted from only officers and FACs, the FACs controlling, to other officers being able to control, to staff NCOs being able to control. And then in 2009, I think with the first group of sergeants went to TCP school. And that's where a couple guys, I've talked about before. Jason Kalo was in that first class, I believe. He was in the first or second. I want to say he was in the first class. He was one of the first Sergeant JTACs. Unfortunately, was killed later that year after TCP school in Afghanistan. And yeah, man. And then when I was at ANGLICO and then got sent over to the MU to be the fires chief, the BLT that we were picking up, we were shorthanded on JTACs in the Marine Corps, which we always are, which was, to me, I can't believe they're sending me to the MU to a non-JTAC billet when they're telling me they're shorthanded on JTACs. So they send me to the MU and to a non-JTAC billet as the fires chief. And then they're like, hey, we're short on JTAC. So they brought up 3 corporals. They sent 3 corporals to TCP school, which was the first time they had ever done that. And 2 of the 3 got designated. One of them ended up not being very good. We spent half a deployment trying to train him, and he just wasn't grasping it. So he never got designated. But I don't know if they did that again. I think that might have been a dire need. We need these JTACs for a deployment. But yeah, man, it's got all the way down to where we've had corporals going to TCP school and getting live controls and stuff like that. So,
one of the stigmas we faced, and I think you talked about it a little bit earlier, when you're in ANGLICO, you're looked at as though you're outside your MOS too, by your monitor, who should be the most spun up guy there is on our MOS. I've
Mm-hmm.
had monitors tell. I've had a not monitors, monitor one that I won't mention his name. He was dumb. I don't know how the hell he made it up there, but he's like, "Hey, Del Dog, you need to get in your." Because I called him up. I'm like, "Dude, I've been a staff sergeant now for 6 years." I'm like, "What is going on? You need to some time in your MOS. You just came from the drill field. You went to artillery for a little bit, and then you're in Anglico." And I'm like, "I'm in my MOS, man. There's a line number here that says 0861 staff sergeant. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, what am I going to?" And that was their mentality. It's like the battery to them was the MOS, or the battalion was the MOS, everything else if you weren't. So that was a problem I think we had too, just being looked at as 0861s. Now, is the
Yeah.
JTAC, the JTAC is not just given to 0861s though, is it?
No, so as a JTAC, that's anybody. That's even 0802s, officer,
Okay.
artillery officers. As long if you're not a FAC, if you're not a pilot, then you're a JTAC. If you go to TCP school, so
Gotcha.
and you'll see mostly 0861s. I think that's the good bulk of it. Then you'll see the 0802s, the artillery officers that go to Anglico. If they get assigned to Anglico, then they generally go. Outside of the Anglico guys that are artillery officers, not many get to go. I think I've only seen one other artillery officer that was a JTAC qualified that wasn't with Anglico. And that just happened to be like, I can't remember. I think he was with Alpha 19 maybe, or he was with one of the other units, and they needed, it was Charlie 16. They needed a JTAC, and they're like, hey, let's just send this guy. And he became the company's fire officer, the company fire officer, and the company JTAC too. So,
Oh, right on.
yeah, so that's and then every once in a while you'll see an infantry guy that has it. Obviously, recon guys go, MARSOC guys go, but yeah, man, it's just one of those things.
Well, I'm happy for you.
So
Jealous.
let's get back. When you were at Anglico, were you were at Anglico when you found out you guys were going to the Gulf War, right?
Oh yeah. So August 2nd, we're in a patrol class. My wife was pregnant at the time with my first son. So August 2nd, I go to this patrol class, Corporal Lozano, and my wife's actually in the headed down to the hospital. She delivered in San Clemente Hospital where she used to work. She's working there at the time. But anyway, so I get this post-it, and it's like, hey, your wife's in the hospital. She just said, go by. She had a bag already made up. She was there for a checkup, I think, and then they said, no, we're keeping you here. So I had to go get the bag from home and whatnot. But we're in that patrol class, and we're getting briefs on Kuwait, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being invaded. So it's like, Kuwait, it was kind of odd. We were grabbing desert maps not too long before that, though. I was going up to Topo Platoon and grabbing as many maps as I could at the time. So I'm kind of tearing off, but when my son was born, so I go to the hospital, and we're watching the invasion of Kuwait. They're keeping me informed. I'm like, yeah, my team leader comes down the next day. My son's born August 3rd, 90. The next day, so my team leader comes down, and the Bubba D at the time, he was my FIC leader, and he's like, hey, LZ, congratulations, this, that, and the other. And I was like, hey, sir, looking up there at the screen because we're watching it. He's like, we're not going to go. That's going to be a mechanized war. And we're like, okay, cool. That was his famous last words, because then my wife had to stay in the hospital. She had a C-section, so she had to stay in for a couple extra days. So on August 7th, I get out of the shower. I'm a smart ass. I call her up. I'm like, hey, we got recalled. I can't come pick you up. And it's her birthday, same day too. So she's like, well, okay. And I was like, I'm just joking. I'm jumping in the shower and I'll come get you. So I get in the shower. No shit. As soon as I get out of the shower, the phone rings. And I remember it's Lance Corporal Smith. He was our NBC guy. And no, not yet. He didn't. He's not the one who called me. It was somebody else who called me. But Smith had something to play in this later. So they're like, hey, Lozano, get in here. I'm like, get in here. Is this a recall? And he's like, get in here. I go, do I need to have my shit? And they're like, no, just get in here. So I get in there and I go to the Green Monster, and Schmidt's running around. He's our NBC guy. He's like, this shit's for real, man. I got antropine, not the. So I was like, hell yeah. And it was just chaos because there's guys that lived, I lived out in town, Alpha Osai Boulevard apartment. So I had to get in there that way. But got in there and they just started, that was August 7th. So that's when we found out, yeah, we're going. We had guys that because we used to do JRTCs in Port Chaffee. I want to say we had a team out there with the 82nd at the time. And I believe they went over straight with them guys. And we were waiting for aircraft. So we knew it was going to be a little bit of time because they were trying to form all the forces. So we were there for the next, I think we left on the 21st. So for the next few days, like my son, she came out of the hospital, but every day I'd leave, had my bags all packed and everything like that. Our shot records done, our wheels done, everything. And I'd drive in. I'd say, I'll give you a call, because they let you call if you were leaving from the no cell phones. You know, back in the CP actually had a payphone, or we were using Duty Hut. But so we did that for, I would say that was we got called in on the 7th for about 2 weeks. We were going in, getting trainings, getting spun up on, assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam kind of things.
Yeah.
How to speak, and the country itself and stuff like that. We upped our, because Anglico we were really good at keeping our guys trained up on medical, at least basic first aid, maybe a little bit of advanced. But so we did a lot of that, and then of course we did a few pack outs where we had inspections and whatnot. And then on the 21st, I remember we pulled into the parking lot. I called her up and said, "Hey, my car's in the parking lot. Keys are with the duty." We didn't know you don't know when you're coming back.
That's
so,
crazy, man. What a completely different time, time to be in the military. No cell phones. I think that's hard for any of us to really kind of fully grasp unless you were there for that, because now that's how all word is passed. It's like a group text, like, "Hey, make sure you're here at this time, da 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 da." Back then, what was it? You called one person, and there's like a runner that goes around to make sure everybody knows. Is that,
Yep.
That's, and what did you know about Kuwait or Iraq at that time? Did you guys have any kind of intelligence briefings on what their military actually consisted of, or what kind of threats you were going to be facing?
Now, Kuwait, not so much, but Iraq, yeah, we knew that. I think at the time they were the 3rd largest army. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, but yeah, we were briefed on. We started getting the briefs on, Saddam, what he was doing to the Shias. I think it was the Shias, because he was a Sunni, right? A Sunni or whatever. So he who he was, about their army, what type. We, being an 0861, what we were focused on. We were focused on, okay, BRDMs, BMPs. What are they rolling with? As far as their tanks, they had all the way up to that time. I think it was T-72. Were the newest, and that was the Republican Guard. But the primary tank, I think it was either the T-55 or the T-62s. And I think it was more T-55s than anything at the time. And we were getting spun up on all that stuff. Do you remember the TISFO? I don't know if you guys played with the TISFO or not.
I never heard of it.
Okay. Totally off real quick. So when you first did your calls for fire on a screen, it was a screen, like a little projector screen, and they had a picture out there, like a slide, and it was Fulda Gap in Germany. That was supposed to be where the hordes of the Russians, when they invaded the U.S., they were going to come through there. So we always trained on that. Hilarious, because you go there, there's only so many terrain sketches you can do of one place for how many years you've been doing it, right? And then I remember we're like, well, were we going to get the desert? They didn't even have pictures for us of where we were headed to go practice that shit. So we had maps. We were doing calls. We would do terrain models and just, work on calls for fire, getting our gear up and whatnot for those 2 weeks when we were in there for the most part.
Yeah. So you guys left in August. Obviously, the war didn't kick off until January, right? That's when the air campaign started.
Yeah. So I ended up getting stuck with assault because my son was born. So I wasn't with the FIC. I got put with a new SALT, which was awesome because it turned out to be a great thing too. It was with Captain Braden at the time. He became a brigadier general, I believe. But he had a new SALT, so I was a fire support guy on the SALT team. We went out there. We flew in the 21st. I remember we were at the port for quite a while. Port Jabal, I think it's called. So we were there until they could find us proper buildings. So pretty much everybody was going there because the MPS shipping had met everybody there. So we were getting a lot of the gear off the MPS ships. And then once we got that, so that's in the early August time or the late August time frame, excuse me. And we ended up finding, I want to say it was like Vanel Corp. They used to have people out there in Saudi Arabia doing the oil and stuff like that, assisting with that stuff. And then they had a lot of TCNs, a lot of third country nationals in some of these little bases they put them in. So we found a base and ended up calling it Camp 5. We had to go out there at a working party and we basically cleaned this shithole of a base up and we made it it was like our real rear where you can come back, take showers and everything like that.
And this is in Saudi Arabia, correct?
Yeah, this is all in Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia was, of course, Saudi is pretty restrictive on a lot of their citizens. So it was, and they didn't like us, Americas or infidels.
It's kind of a weird place.
Yeah. I haven't been back to Saudi. I tried to get back when we were there during OEF in Kuwait. I was like, OIF, and I was trying to get back to cross the border. It was something I wanted to find. But yeah, so freaking, we're there and we're doing some training there, and then we find out we're gonna, we get the briefs, and at the time our CO was Colonel Grubb, good dude too. But he was working with all the basically trying to find out who we were liaisoning with, and I don't know what goes on behind that, but the scenes there. But we ended up with the 18th Airborne Corps. So we had guys that were like assigned to. We were in the east, so we had guys that were assigned to some of the Army units, but we also had all the EPAC forces. So we had dude. I was with started off with the MOTA, and then it was the 8th or the 10th MOTA. Then we ended up with the 2nd Saudi Arabian National Guard, which is like it's a step up from the MOTA. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I was given my own FIC around the November timeframe, and I ended up with the Qataris. But we have guys with UAE. Just about everybody out there. I don't know if we had anybody with a Syrian, but because they were out there too. But I know we had guys with a bunch of the different units that were the EPAC forces, we call them.
Yeah. Michael Garcia was kind of telling us about some of that stuff in the podcast. He was on episode 68 and kind of talked about the build up there and kind of where some of the forces and stuff were. And then gave us his perspective of what happened at Khafji and stuff like that. So I'd like to talk about that, obviously, specifically, because you were obviously a big part of that, and he built it up pretty big. Michael Garcia did on his episode about the actions that happened there and stuff. But I'd like to talk about like the build up to what happened at Khafji. So how did you end up? So for those that may not have listened to that episode, I recommend you go back and listen to it, because he gives a good detail of like kind of where everybody was laid out, how, and feel free to stop me at any point here. But along the border there, you guys had observer teams out made up of ANGLICO and Recon Marines, and I think there was also a SEAL platoon that was out there as well. So you guys were all strung out along the border in different observation positions. Is that correct?
Yeah. There was they had these forts along their border. And I don't know what the mission of those forts were, if they were even still being used, because we didn't use ours because they kept hitting them. But so what they were was, we had teams, and like you said, there was different size teams. I know when I got up to the OP, Colonel Grubb was rotating all of our FOs up there. So we've been basically, I think in November, everybody pushed out to the dirt with their units. We stopped meeting them up and doing training, because we did some training down in Saudi Arabia, like with the AC-130s and stuff like that. So, but then we finally went out to our teams, and we're stuck out. Now we're out there. So what Colonel Grubb was doing, he was taking teams, and he was putting, like, I was on FIC 13, so they took FIC 14, and they put me as the FIC chief. I took my communicator, Corporal Russell, and then I had met up with Lieutenant Lang, who re-enlisted me at 412, which was awesome. So he's a great dude. So he's there as a team leader, and then we had Mike Cruz, who was a comm guy, and then we had Corporal Courtney at the time, Corporal. So I had picked up Sergeant over there in September. But so they split up these teams. What he wanted to do, Colonel Grubb was trying to give us real-time training. In other words, okay, that's when the artillery raids started. They started doing, we were getting shot at probably every night. I think it was after we started dropping bombs on them that they'd start shooting their like Frog 7s or MLSs. They'd use their Scuds for like Israel and Riyadh, the bigger populated places. But we were catching Frog 7s, and that's a pretty big missile, and it makes a pretty big sound and puts a pretty big hole in the ground. But so we were up there and we were observing, and the teams, the way they were set up. My team I had replaced a guy, Gunny Nelson, and I don't know who else was with him up there. And that guy's another great dude too. He was up there for a few days ahead of us, and they were controlling air, because air would come up, and they were actually, shooting live targets, because it was, by that, now it's war. We declared war, I think, on the 17th. So Colonel Grubb was getting all the teams up there to get some experience. So we had just replaced them, guys. We replaced them, but we had, when they were there, they had like a squad of SEALs, like 2 guns with our 2 heavy guns on the Humvees. And, we're soft-skinned Humvees. So at the time, we didn't have tactical Humvees. So but when I got up there, it turned out to be, we had 2 Force Reconnaissance Marines from 4th Force out of Mobile, Alabama. With us, 2 SEALs stayed, and they were basically just as communicators. And then it is our makeshift FIC. It was me. They took crews back to the desal plant behind there. But so basically, we had like 8 guys on that OP. And then I know OP, so we were in the water OP, we're OP 8. And OP 7, which was a few clicks to our west, they had, I think, a bigger bigger setup with soldiers. Like we didn't have any soldiers. They had SF guys with them. And then they actually, I think, occupied that building. And there's some good dudes there. That's just why I think I've given you names. But like John Calhoun, Steve Foss, Tigger, he's another great guy. He's got some great stories, and not just good. He's got a lot of history, I guess. What he's done, because he went to the Army afterwards and then did some stuff over there as well. So, but so they were set up, and then I believe we had a couple more fixed. I was only so much concerned about me and 7 because we were watching the actual main highway from Kuwait into Saudi Arabia down. Basically, it's like it's just a huge freeway, for lack of a better description. But so I wasn't too concerned about that. But then I know about the other teams aside from us and OP7. But I know there was then you had just recon Marines manning some of these OPs. Like Lieutenant Ross had some guys that he ended up at ANGLICO as I want to say he was our XO for a while later on, but he had a recon team down there. So there was these teams all the way through there. I don't know how they were doing it, but I know ANGLICO, we were rotating them so we can get some live controls basically.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're like kind of prepping for the war in the middle of the war, like rotating guys up just to get some controls on targets that are moving around. What kind of targets were you guys seeing?
Oh, so somebody compared it to World War One, like trench warfare, because and in essence, that's exactly what it was. We were in a static OP that wasn't very built up. I mean, we left the building because they kept shooting at the building, so we pulled back about 100 meters behind, and we found a little bit bigger hill that we could pile rocks up and sandbags that we had, so that we could see above we could see them, but. You had troops in the open. You had guys. We were watching guys watching us. There was tanks out there. There was. I didn't see them, but we knew we ended up killing them because of the BDA that was found later on. But and I think OP7 is the one that whacked them. But it was like a 152 millimeter battery. A lot of truck movement because when we got up there. So I got up there on the 27th, I believe, and you're already hearing rumblings. You're hearing vehicles, and you know how far vehicles, how they sound in the desert, and you're just hearing them out there. So we're talking to 7, but we were seeing. I didn't see any like ZSU 23 TAC 4s or anything like that. Just trucks, troops in open, some tanks, because they dug in a lot of that shit on the. They dug in a lot of their stuff so it's just barely above the berm kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which made it hard to find them unless it was at night. So and then there was a barracks. That these guys kept going into. We called it a barracks. It was a building, but they kept going in this building. So we'd see, stuff like that. It'd heat up at night. We had our whole system set up. Our mule. We were running it with the night vision on it, the big thermal sight on it, and so you would see that stuff at night. Because we didn't have a lot of cool gadgets like they do now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, we're spoiled now.
Well, you guys are smarter too, smarter than us. I'm sure of that. But what is it? The PDS 14 or 17, which was the Starlight scope that they used in Vietnam.
The PDS 14s are the flip down single eye.
Okay, maybe it's.
But I know what you're talking about. PDS 28s or whatever. I know it's the bigger NVG one. It's like a scope size.
That's exactly what it is, the Starlight scope. Because listen, when we went, we had ANGBS 5s. So I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're a box. They're a box, so you have no peripheral vision. You put them on, and basically they fit like this. Look them up if you can, ANGBS 5s, and then they have the sights on it, but you can't see anything. So you're basically just doing, and the depth perception sucked. So it was kind of bad. It was some of the stuff we had. Our GPS is back. This was pre-GPS day for everybody, so it was the trim packs, the Trimble trim packs, and they were just, I believe they were from navigation, like the boats, and they brought them out to us. Because you couldn't find any points out there to set up any type of what is a tall mountain? What do we call a tall mountain? Or reference points or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? So you didn't have any of that terrain. You couldn't terrain associate shit.
Yeah.
You knew the water was on my right, and I knew that the desert was to the left, and so you're sitting there with this Trimble trim pack, and you're holding it outside. I mean, that was crazy. Just trying to get your grids, getting enough GPSs on that. So. And we carried at that time, we had Prick 77s, 113 for air. So we had a VHF was the 77, the UHF was the 113, and then we had HF, which was our 104.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, as far as night sights, there was the thermal sights were kind of cool, but and you know what? I know I'm going on another tangent, but what I love that they have now is the real drone systems, because back in the day they used to just have a UAV platoon, and there were always 6-1s that were involved in that. But seeing when they'd throw out a UAV and they'd come back with that footage, I had a hard time. They tried to brief us in on some footage, and I'm looking at it going, what the hell am I looking at?
Looks like a bunch of blobs.
Yeah,
I can't imagine what they looked like then.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was really terrible, but you knew they were out there. So, and you heard a lot of movement. A lot of it was, a lot of our targets were, they exposed themselves at night for the most part, because they tended to move around at night. We didn't realize the significance of all the noise, though. We didn't realize that they were actually building up to come across.
Yeah, and that's so on the night that this whole thing kicked off, I was like Garcia was saying in his interview, you guys were having some kind of comm issues, and then there was also a recon, like LPOP, I guess, forward of you guys, that there was supposed to be someone there to warn you guys of armor, but he didn't have a radio. I guess he didn't bring a radio with him or something like that, so he didn't have it. So can you kind of explain like the events of that day and kind of what happened through the evening?
Well, I got to go back a little bit. So we were there. We were hitting targets of opportunity. Gunny Nelson had targets so anytime an aircraft would come up, it would be like, hey, they're checking on station because they're coming back. And if they didn't drop, like a deep air support mission, they had their bombs on. So the first thing we'd ask them is, what's your load? They'd tell us and how much time you got on station. So good to go. So we'd get to run those guys. So we were pissing them off. You know what I mean? We're killing some of their guys. They shot a loom over our OP. I'll tell you another story here shortly, but OP7 was killing a lot of guys too. Because Captain Kleinsmith and Calhoun and Tigger Foss, those guys were like smoking a lot of shit out there because they had a great view out there too, and they were rolling right in front of them, so they were killing a lot of stuff. But anyway, so we were getting to them, and then on the morning of the 29th, Butchie, my radio operator, is like, I hear him yell, Kiff, and Kiff is stopped. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? And go running out with my weapon, and I've fucking got a blanket over me, like those wool blankets from the ship, the gray ones, but I cut a hole in it. So I had it over me like a serape, and I had my gear, my H harness around me. So I go running up with them, and I'm like looking at these dudes, and there's 3 Iraqis, man, walked right up to our OP in tanker suits.
Oh, whoa, no way.
They were shaved. They were clean. I mean, they smell like cologne. And we were out there for a couple days. We smelled like ass because it was just, it's hot as fuck. Actually, January is kind of cold. That's why I was wearing that. But it was just, you're out in the dirt. And so we get on those guys real quick, and then the lieutenant comes up, and we pulled maps off them. They had our OP they had ROP, they had other targets, but I specifically saw ROP, and I'm like, hey, sir, they're targeting us, these guys. And as soon as we got them, the SEALs came and took them away from us. And as soon as we got those guys away from us, a round went off. It was like that quick. It went boom, boom. There was a tank had fired around and hit the berm in front of us, and we're all looking for like a smoke signal or like some sort of trail of something. Didn't see shit, and I was like, well, so they knew where we were, and they and then we were getting like I think I told you about the A-10s. So the night before, we had that building that we called a barracks, because we were watching it. It would just get hot at night. You could see it. You knew people were in there. And I'd say about 04 that morning. So it was the I want to say it was the evening of 28th, morning of 29th, before we got these guys. So 4 in the morning, and and I could be wrong on my day. It could have been the day before. The guys that we caught though were the day of. But Butchie calls me. He's like, hey, LZ, we got 2 sections of Harriers, or we got a section of Harriers. And I'm like, what do they got? And he's like, Mark 20 Rockeye and what was a LGB? Not an LGB though. It was just a 82. What's a 500 pounder?
Oh, Mark 82. Yeah.
Mark 82s. There you go. So I'm like, shit. And what these guys were is they were able to laze from their. They could pick up my laser from their aircraft. So I was just basically like, I go, hey, just run them on that fucking barracks, man. Those guys are still in there. So Butchie's fucking controlling him, a corporal, sergeant's on the laser, and my lieutenant's, crashed out because we're doing 50-50. And fucking just all hell broke. Boom! It just blew the fuck out of that building. And then we were so close because we're on the coast that we sat in that smoke for I'd say a good 40 minutes. It would have been a perfect time for them to attack us because we couldn't see shit. It was literally just like a fog over us. But Lieutenant came up, "What's going on?" It's like, "Hey, sir, we just got that building." He's like, "All right, cool." So then we started having secondaries, and I think 6-7 hit some stuff too, and they started having a lot of secondaries. So they started figuring it out. Hey, we're gonna be they're storing shit now. They're moving shit forward, but we still didn't have a clue. So that day we caught the 2 Iraqis. They took or the 3 Iraqis. They took them back to a meeting at the desalination plant. Back in the day, we were part of I know you've heard it before, but SRIG, the Surveillance Reconnaissance Intelligence Group, and Colonel Barry at the time was the actual CEO of SRIG. So he had a group of, and they had like the SEAL guys that were the command to the guys that were up on the OPs there. They had the SF BOAs and a bunch of other just people out there at the desal plant, which was behind the OPs, but in front of Khafji. So he went back to a meeting there. When he was at the meeting, we started improving our OP even better. Our biggest concern was because the SEALs actually had claymores where those guys walked, and they didn't trip them off. And then we asked the SEALs, where are the claymores? And they said, "Oh, we moved them. We put them over on the coast." They put them along the water. I'm like, "Oh fuck!" Well, and they were doing artillery raids too. If you remember, you've heard that too. So those guys would come up, shoot, and then scoot back. Well, we'd get visited sometimes by we got visited at least once, but I know the OPs were getting visited by them. They come up and say, "Hey, what's going on? Hey, how you guys doing?" You know, kind of shaking hands and, "Hey, keep up the good work." And you guys are smoking these fuckers. You're shooting them. You know, they're shooting, I don't know, battery 6 and then plugging out. Yeah. So that was a big concern of ours. So we started improving our OP, and then of course comms good to go. We had a KY-57 up there attached to our. I want to say we had it attached to our UHF because we were talking green there. We were able to talk encrypted to them, and we might have had one with our 77 too. That makes sense. So I think we had them both. No crypto on our HF radio. So we start. What I wanted to back up though with the A10 thing. When we had an A10s check on station one night, and these guys are like, "Hey, you guys got anything out there for us?" And we're like, "Yeah, but we can't talk." On our UHF, it went the KY-57 went bad. And I think that was the only one we had. I don't think we had one in the. So we told them, "Hey, we can't talk in the green." So I got to be careful when I give you this. I'm sending them a landline, but I'm trying to talk them on. It's all
unencrypted, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to tell them where I'm at. And then it's pretty obvious. These guys know where we're at. I mean, we found that out later on. This is before we caught those 3 guys. But the A10 checks on. It's like, "Hey, can you drop a loom for me? And we'll figure it out from there. I'll talk you on from the loom because I'm not going to be able to talk you on from me." So they had AGM-65. So what, Mavericks or Walleye? Yeah. So they're flying and they drop in a loom. And now this is before this A10s. We do like Kodak passes and everything like that, in training, right? So we're out there with the Saudis and we're out there with the Qataris and we're running airform and showing them our assets. And they come out like A64s came out, A10s came out, F18s came out. We had A6s. We had the PPN-19s at the time, the beacons. So we had all these guys, but the A10s would come in low and slow and do that, and it's just awesome. So you got that warm and fuzzy. These guys are, God, come that fucking air war started and trying to find an A10 in the air, you couldn't see them. They were so far up. Yeah. And I was like, their standoff is so far back. And then all of a sudden they drop an aluminum round. And where does it pop? Right above our OP, literally above my OP. And I just hunkered down, and the SEALs are looking at me like I'm an idiot because I'm calling in this aircraft. And, the LPOP in front of us is, what the fuck is going on? That thing stayed over for like, I don't know what the burn time was. I say 4 minutes, but it might have been 2 minutes, but it's long. So I was like, "Hey, I need you to push that up 2 clicks," because I was trying to get it behind the barracks. Yeah. And so he's like, "Copy." And I remember this. He goes, "Request to come in with our guns to mark." And I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Dude, I just told you dropped short. I can't say, 'Hey, you're right over me, asshole.'" So I about to say something, and then the lieutenant's like, "LZ, just," and then I think they got pushed off to another OP, which was fine with me. So we did. But of course, you have A10s later on, go through all wars after that, and during that, it had some issues with fratricide. But I was like, Yeah, I didn't have a real love for A-10s after that. I was like, oh, you put a Marine pilot in that son of a bitch, he's gonna fly it until it's a bust. But
Yeah, there's a
um,
lot of A10s don't have because they're used for close air support so much. They've also had a lot of fratricide incidents. You know,
yeah,
A10s are what took out the AAV in Nasiriyah in the opening days of the Iraq War.
yep,
OIF killed a bunch of dudes there. You had A10s. I want to say A10s dropped on friendlies also in the Gulf War at some point.
they
They
did,
actually did
they
drop
did.
on friendlies. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a
Um,
green on green with an LAV to another LAV, and then they had I believe an A-10 that hit them with I want to say a rockeye. They hit him with
yeah.
something, blew the shit out of it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. I used to teach a fratricide class too, and another incident from the Gulf War was a Apache that shot in an Army APC that was online. They were like on I don't know if they were screening or what, but it was like the very end, the last vehicle on this like picket line or whatever you want to call it. It was the end vehicle, and it was misidentified as an enemy vehicle. And obviously, technology was different in the Gulf War, and like you said, like positioning, it was harder to find actual positions of where people were at because GPS wasn't like a thing. You know, it wasn't like a
Right.
common thing and stuff like that. So they ended up killing. I think that hit that vehicle and killed at least one kid, injured multiple, and that's a video that's pretty famous because of that whole incident and the way the pilots were talking, like, "Oh, I hope it's not a bad guy," and or "Hope it's not a good guy," and then like launches a rocket, and you're like, "What the fuck?" Like,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
I've seen that.
yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
wild, man. But so so you guys are getting all set up. I mean, it's starting to heat up. Obviously, there's starting to become some like trading of IDF assets or whatever fire support assets between you guys and the Iraqis. Um,
yeah.
like what? So you had no idea that this like. So I was told it was a company of armor of Iraqi armor that had pulled up to the line. You guys had no idea that was there.
No, it wasn't a company. It was actually, if you look at it, it was Fifth Mechanized Brigade. They
Okay.
what their intent was. They've been building up over the time. Now I've
Mm-hmm.
been up there since the 27th. And remember, I was telling you we hear these motors and everything.
Yeah.
So we had an inkling, but we weren't sure what they were doing. Were they setting up a defense? You know what I mean? I had no inkling that they were coming over at
Yeah.
all. I mean, and then we started hearing. And I'm going to be very honest with you though too. Complacency, it kills. You know what I'm saying? And
For
we were
sure.
up there for a couple of days. We're already dropping bombs. We know we're getting these guys. Our how do you say, our confidence is really high. And I equated it to like when the varsity team in football goes and plays their freshman team. You know, it's just, you know, you're going to dominate the shit out of them. So it's just, and that's kind of where we were at that point because we hadn't really received it. They threw a couple rounds at us. We had an aluminum round light our pause. We were waiting for the death shots, but they never showed up. So basically, you kind of got that feeling that not necessarily invincibility, but you felt like, yeah, hey, you know, we got this shit under control. Maybe they're just gearing up because they, you know, to me it made sense that they were going to be setting up a defense like they had been because that's the way we were briefed on their defenses. I think they set up a triangle defense,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't real briefed in on anything as far as their movements. I know the lieutenant went down to that day, the day leading up to it that we got hit. He went down to a meeting and they told him about the stockpiles that hit because there was multiple explosions throughout the day. Aircraft were coming back, seeing it, calling it in, and stuff like that. And but yeah, no. So that night, it gets dark, and I'm like, hey, fucking, let's start. Well, so I was like, hey, put the gear, the radio gear, and all of our gear that we do not need, put it away for right now. Stack it back in our RV. And we had a high back. No, it was a 4-seater, so it was a low back. And but we had all of our radio gear in there, and our packs and whatnot. And we started hearing now real loud rumbling. So Lieutenant Lang's talking to then Captain Kleinsmith. They're talking back and forth. Hey, you guys hear this? You hear this? And we're like, yeah, fucking. You know, it's starting to get a little, you know, sketchy now because it's a lot of that creaking sound of the, you know, you hear
Yeah.
mechanized. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you're hearing that shit for miles, and you're like, but you ain't seen shit. And we had our thermal sights set up, and I was like, hey, well, let's go ahead and start tearing this down. I said because this is going to be a bitch to unload, kind of thing. You know, if we have to scoot. So we started hearing, we started talking, and we're asking for air, and then we started hearing about OPs getting hit at the far end, like the west, like at the elbow and shit. So we're like, okay, they're hitting people now. So the lieutenant, I remember he called back and he's like, "Hey, we got mechanized. We are 8 guys at the time. No heavy machine guns. Just I think the recon Bubba's had an M60 with them. I think that was it. There were 2 of them up front, and there's 2 of them up front. I'm sorry, and there's 2 of them in the back. So there was 8 of them. There was 10 of us up there, I believe. There might have been 4 SEALs, but I only seen 2. So we start hearing this, and the lieutenant says, "Hey, can we get some air out here? Start pushing air out to us." And they're like, "Be advised, all assets are over to they were being pushed to the guys that were in contact." So we're like, "Fuck, man." All right, so we start tearing it down, and then they come back on. They say, because we're getting ready to scoot. Like I said, we were going to call in as best we could, but we were going to scoot. And then he got a call. "Hey, I remember it. General Boomer's dedicated all air to you guys tonight. Stay in your OP." So we're like, "Fucking A." All right, so we set everything back up. Now, I've set everything back up thinking, okay, we're just going to be getting air, stacked on air, and we're just going to be controlling this shit. And we're going to be here until the lieutenant said untenable. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I'm a simple guy. So, so I hear that, and I'm like, okay, good to go. And fuck, I don't remember what time it was, but it was dark. And all of a sudden I see the lieutenant's up because everybody hears it. Courtney's down by the vehicle now. He's sitting in the vehicle. Or he's prepping it or doing something with it. I know, but Butchie and me were up on the top of the hill there, and with the lieutenant, and the recon Bubbas just come flying past. I mean, they're running. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? I'm like, you can't hear shit. It's really loud. And he's like, all I heard and all I seen in his face was tracks. And he's like, his fucking eyes are just huge. And he goes running right past us. And they went down to their Humvee, and it was they were gone. And then as soon as he said that, I turned back. So I was watching. I turned back around, and fucking 12.7 gun. You could just see it start to fire as it came in an arch, and it was on a tank, and it just started firing, and it started raking our OP. And the lieutenant was just putting in. He's just got his. He was just on the LDRM, so he just swiveling it over, and that fucker came up right in front of him. So it's right there, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, wow.
LDRM. Yeah, so he's like, yeah. So long story short on that, we got kind of fucked. We had to scoot out of there. So we basically, the lieutenant went there, got down. Me and Butchie, I told Butchie just tell him we're being overran, and you can hear kind of the transmissions. And he sounds really calm. I think he says this might be after the fact though, because our 77 didn't. This was one of the radio's problems. Our 77 wouldn't transmit, and we didn't have. We were just in a regular. We weren't in a marked vehicle. Marked being the
comm vehicle,
the radio vehicles. Yeah, so we were in a regular soft scan 4-door, and I remember, man, I was like, you're stuck there. You're looking at basically this fan. It's like a ceiling full of tracers over your head, and you're trying to scoot down this little hill, and they're fucking shooting at us and whatnot. And get down to the Humvee. Get out. As soon as we pulled out, the SEALs were gone. They boned out, and the recon Bubba's boned out. And it was funny because we talked about having an E&E that was going to be, because they had 2 boats. And they were but we didn't do it because they put the Claymores on the beach. But so I don't know what happened to those boats because they didn't take them. But that was what we were going to do, is jump in boats and just get off the dirt. But we ended up driving. I think you froze up.
No,
I'm
just not moving very much.
Oh, okay, gotcha. No, it looked pixelated, but yeah. So we ended up, as soon as Courtney pulled out from the berm, we were kind of in a dug-in berm. We pulled out, and no shit, man, there they are, just T-55s, and I mean, it's not like I was seeing silhouettes. I'll tell you this: I was seeing their main gunfire and their 12.7 on there. What are they? Are they Type 63s or are they the troop carriers? They're like kind of boxy, but not as high as like the 113. But their machine guns going off. I mean, it was just like we just rolled out like into a turkey shoot, and we were the turkey kind of thing. So we're bouncing around and get back to the desalination plant. And as soon as we get back to the desalination plant, we're thinking, okay, this is, even Butchie said it later. I said, and the lieutenant, we thought we were going to link up with these guys, and it's going to be like kind of like the Alamo, because we knew when you're only so many guys, and then suddenly you triple that, you know what I mean? You feel like you got a lot of people with you.
I feel a little better about the situation. And when you say you thought you were going to link up with the recon and the SEAL guys that had already pulled back?
No, we were going to link up with, they already pulled back to the desal plant, and we are going to link up with people at the desalination plant.
Oh, okay,
So it was all the
gotcha.
headquarters guys with them. But they had, they had heavy machine guns. I know they had 50 cals and shit like that. So it's like, we roll in and everybody's bugging out. And we're like, where the fuck are they going? So now you want to talk about some crazy shit. Because now we have no comm. People were trying to get us on the hooks, and we couldn't say, hey, we lived through that shit. You know what I mean? They're like, they thought, I mean, if John, my buddy, the way they describe it, he's like, when he saw it, he's like, oh, fuck. Because it was just crazy the way it looked. I mean, it looked like there's nobody going to survive that. But we ended up linking up with them at the desal plant. Well, not OP7. They stayed there. But everybody's bugging out towards Khafji, and I have no clue as to where we're headed. So Colonel Barry leads us all out, and I just wanted to make sure, because we had another captain that was there, and then we had Cruz, who I had put there as a communicator for the captain. So I'm like making sure Cruz was good to go, and he was like, yeah, and the captain. And then they're good to go. We saw him pass us, so we're fine. Everybody's leaving. And then we stopped halfway down into Khafji. And I remember Colonel Barry's like, get out, set up a fan. So we basically set up a fan. Everybody's got AT4s. I'm telling you, if we would have shot these things, everybody would have been burning everybody's asses. And, we'd have so many fucking concussions. But the way it was set up was everybody just jumped out, and they were, taking up a position like a half moon kind of thing. And I just started tossing chem lights on our vehicles, because what happened was we had a section of snakes that came up the road, and they were going to go engage the guys that were coming down the road. So we just marked our vehicles at the top of them with chem lights, like, hey, don't shoot us, kind of thing. And no sooner did everybody get set up, and Colonel Barry's like, mount up, mount up. So we mount back up, and we get in the vehicle, and we're kind of almost tailing Charlie again. So we take off with these guys, and we end up in the safe house area in Khafji that I had never been to. So it was like kind of new to me, but the way it's set up like apartments with a square parking lot kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And now, so we've got our AT4s, they're up on the OP. My laws are up on the OP. We've got all of our personal weapons with us, but we don't have our radio gear and shit like that. So we had to make it known, hey, we got compromised. Our 77 got compromised with the 57. Maybe it was the 113, like I said. But one of them had the KY 57 on it, so we called it out. Hey, we got compromised. So, and our radio gear's compromised. So we ended up linking up and this area with this. We didn't have any clue about those recon bubbles yet either that were behind us that stayed over in Khafji. But I remember they're breaking windows, and we're getting into this building, and it was set up, and everybody's in there, and they're talking, and the lieutenant colonel he's like, hey, I want 2 people in that tower. And it's a pretty famous tower now in the video, but he's like, put 2 people up there. And I'm like telling the lieutenant, hey man, we don't need to go to the tower. We can see if we just get on one of these mosques or one of these higher buildings. You don't need to be in the highest fucking building. He's like, he knew, you know what I mean? The look on his face, he knew, but he's like, okay. So they went up there. And meanwhile, I'm trying to keep track of my team. So this is kind of that fog of war thing now, because you got your 2 officers took off to the tower, which you don't really know how to get to. You just know it's there. You can see it. It's kind of like that little maze game you play, but playing it from this level, like walking into a corn maze kind of thing. So, and then I got one of the funniest things though is Marines are fucking awesome, because Courtney, he's down there, and he's like, hey, LZ, look what I got. He's got a law, and it's already been fucking pulled out, right? And I was like, where'd you get that? And he goes, I traded somebody for a grenade. He gave him a hand grenade, and they gave him the law. I was like, fuck yeah, dude. That's, he's out there willing to, hey, he's got to have something to shoot at these fuckers, right?
Yeah, for real.
So
I'd be glad to have one at that point.
Right? So I was pretty, even you're thinking about that, you're like, fuck yeah, this is pretty cool, man. It's not cool, but it's cool because they're keeping their heads about it. Guys were. Yeah. And it was a pretty overwhelming force. So next thing you know, Colonel Barry again, hey, he says, mount up, we're leaving the city kind of thing. So I'm fucking trying to get everybody together, and vehicles are just punching out now. I mean, it's kind of like on your own kind of thing. They're going out, the exit, making that left and hitting out through the arches kind of thing. And I run up in front of Lieutenant Colonel Barry's vehicle. I'm like, hey, stop. I was like, I got to go get my officers. And he's like, where are they? I go, I'm in the tower. And he goes, what the fuck are they doing in the tower? Or so, I just remember I go, you fucking sent them there. And that was it. He's like, follow me. He's like, he had enough of me. He's like, follow me. So he fucking rolls up. And the tower starts taking shots anyway. So now he rolls up, points at the tower. I jump out, run up, and I'm like, hey, sir. And I hear, we're coming. And they're sliding down the steps. And it's fucking high, man. So they got in there, and then we boned out, and we drove out of Khafji, and the night belonged to the Iraqis. And they got Khafji, but they didn't. We obviously didn't know there was a recon team in there from was it 3rd Marines or some shit like that from Hawaii.
Yeah, that's a thing. They were holed up on a building top like for over a day, right? They were up there. No one even knew they were up there.
Yeah, we didn't have a clue, man. So we pulled back, and now you're kind of only aware of what's going on with you, right? I mean, we can't talk back to anybody. So I'm trying to maintain everybody, and then we get stopped. We stop. I think what happened was 3rd Marines started setting up a blocking force. They actually started bringing Marines up and setting up a blocking force, and we went through them, and then we stopped. And I remember a fucking commo came over and started yelling at Corporal Russell, like, "What the fuck, I don't know what the exact verbiage was, but it was because we left our radios. Well, we didn't realize they thought we had left a Kick 13, and the reason they thought that is because the recon team actually had a Kick 13,
and which is for those that don't know, that's how you encrypt the radios.
Right. So it was worse than our 57 because our 57 we were changing those things every 3 days, I believe, anyway, or however many days it was. It was very quick. So we felt a little better about that once we found out because he's, "I need a list of the radios," and I was like, "Hey, sir, fucking, you'll get your shit later. We're gonna go. You go talk to my lieutenant. Like, get the fuck away from us." And then because we were on separate teams. My team, my FIC now is actually being pushed up with the Qataris. My FIC that I'm not on right now because I'm in this quasi FIC, right? Mm-hmm. So they split us back up. We linked back, but so that night, the rest of that night, we were kind of finished with that. We had to go back to the salt. We had to count for shit. The Iraqis didn't push any farther than Khafji. They didn't push out that way, at least. I know they were around Khafji and other places. And like, if you can get those guys from FIC 7, those guys did some pretty cool shit, like smart, heroic shit. Like we're pulling their vehicles into a subca because they knew the tanks wouldn't go in there, the heavy equipment wouldn't get in there, so they kind of got surrounded. They were behind these guys, and they were just, they had snakes with them, so and it was a great team. They're running all kinds of shit on these guys. Their BDAs were probably huge, but yeah. So we link back up though. We give our whole debrief to our assault, and I don't know if the colonel was there or not. Let them know what's going on. They know we got radio gear, so what they do is they say, "Okay, hey, we'll get back to your FIC." So I go back to my FIC 13, McIlvreed and Bo and Butchie and Fallhaber, and we had a guy, Mahmoud. We just called him Adam. He was a Somali translator for us with the Qataris. So he was in our Humvee too. And at this point, we hadn't split up our FIC, like 3 on mech, 3 on the Humvee yet. So we were all riding in the Humvee together because it wasn't. We were going to do that when we started getting ready to take off, to cross the LOD, but we didn't. We weren't there yet. They surprised us. So went out there the next day, and then you see the towers becoming an issue. We're starting to get bracketed. So we've got fucking shells landing here, shell landing behind the shell, and we're waiting. Like, when are they going to fire for effect on us? And my Lance Corporal Vo, man, solid guy. I mean, he was a panicking. He's like, "Hey, we're going to die. We're going to die." And he was, he's Vietnamese, so he's really hard to understand on the radio already. And then like he's fucking, now he's really stressed out, which is, I had to tell him to calm down for a little bit. And he's the only one that came up with this. So we're controlling air on that tower because they want that tower down. And I've got the lieutenants controlling it. At least one Harrier was in the area, and he had a Mark 82, and I was lasing the building. And I remember when he's like cleared hot, next thing you know, I don't know, a few seconds later, we hear a big explosion off to our east. And what it had done is the Harrier, we figured this out later, but the Harrier had come in and it wasn't within that safety cone. So I think it picked up the sparkle from from where I was initiating it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't an LGB, so he just pickled the bomb. And it, fortunately for us, landed a ways away. But there's a video. It's kind of a famous video of Khafji, and it's these guys standing behind a wall, and they're firing a 50 cal, and there's a bunch of them next to the Humvee, and all of a sudden you hear a boom, and everybody ducks down. That's I'm pretty sure that's what happened because we weren't there with them guys. We were off to the side, but that's about where the bomb landed.
Yeah, so I'll have to see if I can find that video.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But Vo, he says, "Hey, Sergeant Lozano," he goes, "What's the range on those tanks?" We had AMX-10s, troop carriers, and AMX-30 tanks. The Qataris ran French equipment. I'm like, hey, that's a great idea, Bo. I was like, hey, sir, what's the range on the tanks? Fuck, drive me up. We drive up to the tank commander, and he's like, tells him, and he's like, well, fucking scoot your tanks up and start firing on that fucking tower. And that was Bo initiated that shit. So I put him in for something. I put him in for an M with a V, and don't know what happened to it. But just for having the foresight to, you know what I mean, to let's get this shit done, because we weren't, well, because this time we knew now that there's recon guys in there.
Yeah.
Still. So we're kind of on that, like trying to get them out and, you know, and still, you know, kill as many bad guys as we can. And so they did that. They moved up their tanks there. You can see, I think if you watch, there might be a video of like, you might see, I think they had the Milans, which were like tow missiles. And you can see those things hitting the tower, the tanks hitting the tower, the Cobras were hitting the tower. We had a section of Cobras out there that was hitting the tower. So finally the Saudis, they just said, hey, we're going in. So they went up, like, you know, that term, hey, diddle, diddle, straight up the middle. And they did that. And it was kind of a recon by fire, because they were in the B-150s, or thin-skinned vehicles, and they were taking RPG strikes. And just, you get some video of those guys just getting, you know, burned to death, you know, laying outside their vehicle kind of thing, hanging halfway out the door. Yeah, it was, man. But then we ended up going back in. I honestly couldn't tell you how many days that was. It just seemed like it all was one day after that. But we ended up in the city. There's actually, my FIC is on a video, because when we were going back from the gas station, they had a bunch of reporters at the gas station, which was kind of south, but just a little way south. And you see our video of us, and you see, because I had a Nivis antenna, I had set up those cami poles, 4 of them. And then we put a Nivis to our HF, because I actually had a marked vehicle as a highback, but we took the tarp off of it. And we had the Nivis up, so you can see us and kind of ducking around, but we're in the middle of some AMX 30s, like doing a serpentine kind of thing off the road into the desert kind of thing. And then they went in there and they just started firing on pretty much everything. I mean, we're looking at windows. Air is not being controlled at this point. The recon team's out, and they're just shooting at damn near everything that there is to shoot at, kind of thing. And, you know, we're passing the BMPs or the troop carriers with, you know, fucking flames. They're just engulfed in flames. Whoever's in there's in there. They're not coming out, kind of thing. And it was pretty wild, man.
That's crazy. So is it fair to say that the Iraqis had a really good start, and by overrunning you guys, kind of, you know, obviously surprised everyone that was on that line there? They got overran, but then they failed to capitalize on it. So they like kind of pushed and then stopped. Like, had they continued to push, do you think they would have had better results? Or
I think in lessons learned, what they were saying was Saddam wanted to capture the city, and he wanted to capture the OPs. He knew there's OPs. He wanted to take American prisoners. So we were kind of a target. But they also said that because when he pushed in initially, it was with 5th Mech. And then what they did is they put in all this conscripts. They pulled 5th Mech out, from the way I understand it, and they put in like scrubs. So these scrubs are like, hold the city, because I don't think he expected to hold the city. Remember, he kind of kept his cards close to him, like his better units closer to him, I think, in Iraq. So, and 5th Mech wasn't a slouch, but yeah, I don't know how far they really could have got. I mean, 3rd Marines, when we were pulling back, 3rd Marines was setting up their blocking force. And we're just talking mechanized on mechanized. I have a feeling that we would have, you know, back then we had what tanks did we use back then?
Wasn't M60s?
Yeah, the M60s. We had the old tanks. So those guys were badass too. But yeah, so I don't know, to be honest with you, how far he would have got. Would they got down to Rashab, El Rashab? I don't know, the Navy base there, but
it would have been a vicious fight though. Once they hit that armor,
it would have been a hell of a fight. I think armor on armor like that. But then our Cobras and our guys were they're getting schwacked too. I mean, they were dropping. I'd love to have seen it from up the air, man. They had to be killing all kinds of shit.
What was the feeling of surviving that, basically running, you know, getting away from armor that's trying to chase you down and kill you, and then having a commo tell you that you shouldn't have forgot your radios? You know, what's that kind of like, fuck you, you know, in my own mind, I'm like, dude, you weren't there. Like, you know, that's how I feel like it probably went.
Yeah, it did. That's why I told him, go fucking talk to my lieutenant. I was pissed. But you know what, though? It also, I mean, it sucks to have to admit that complacency kind of killed us, because you know how we trained, like, you'll burn your crypto, tape a thermite grenade to your crypto. But I'm telling you, when that shit's coming like at you at that pace, it's like the last thing on your fucking mind is pulling a pin on a thermite grenade to burn something. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so it taught me, actually, I mean, it taught me to be better prepared for one, but and to realize that shit ain't gonna always go the way we plan. So have another plan as far as how you're gonna do that. Could I have shot the radios? Yeah, I could have shot the radios, but my attention was focused towards the assholes coming at us rather than shooting the radios, kind of thing. Yeah. So, but it was. I mean, and it's a gut check. When you look back at it and you go, fuck, dude, that's how could we have done that different? Because we weren't set. We were a static OP. We should for what we were doing. We probably should have had like a platoon strength of guys there, like
a security element. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because the OPs were effective.
Yeah.
And don't know what would have happened, but you hear stories about the guys on the elbow, the recon bubbas that had they were out there engaging with their 50 cals, with AT4s, with laws. They were getting some strikes in before they had to bug out.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool that like you have that story, man. Like, how many people have a story like that where you're? I mean, and how many people would want a story like that? Let's be honest. Like being overrun. I don't know, man. What a crazy situation you found yourself in, and the fact that it kind of just it all happened so quickly, and you guys kind of adjusted on the fly. I mean, I guess a testament to the people you were working with and the training and stuff that you had, that you guys made it through that all right. How much of the gear did you recover, like that you left behind?
So what ended up happening, I got to back up one thing though. So when we were doing our scooting back, our basically retreating, there was still the battle going on. And a lot of the ANGLICO bubbas, there's so many different stories you want to talk about deconfliction, that they actually deconflicted between the Qataris and the Sang guys shooting each other with tanks, because they're like, hey, is that you kind of thing. The ANGLICOs were able to do that. So they actually saved some fratricide, which was badass, because there's so many FICs out there. Like I said, I only was fixated with my FIC at the time, because now our FIC is kind of scattered. So, but there's so many other stories out there too about that. But so what ended up happening was Lieutenant Lang he's got his FIC again together, and a lot of that gear was already his. He had brought his gear, so he was going to go back up there and get it, the radio gear. That was his team's gear. So they went back up there during this fight. Him and I don't know if it was a SEAL Bubba, a friend of his, but they took the team up there. They went up there and they recovered. I think they recovered damn near every piece of radio gear that was left. Some shit had been gone through, notebooks. I was bummed. I mean, I was bummed obviously because it happened, but my wife, so she's a good FO wife. She sends me things while we're over there, right? One of the things she sends me was Fire Dream, which was, I don't know if you've ever read that. It's a fictional book about ANGLICO in Vietnam. And it's really cool because it's like, what is this? But if you see it, Fire Dream is a really good book. And then she sent me these binos that were black rubber coated, but on the inside they had a reticle pattern, and then they had degrees. So they gave you degrees, so I could actually use my compass. Well, I left those on the OP, so some Iraqi either they got blown up or some Iraqi was running around with them. I never got them back.
That sucks, dude. Were you guys afraid that they may have booby trapped the stuff that they when you went back to recover gear?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I wasn't with them guys because that was Lieutenant Lang's team went back. So I was doing my thing now with my FIC while they were up doing their recovery mission on their gear. But I don't know. I couldn't tell you what their thought process was. I imagine it's pretty hairy because shit's still going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know what type of ordnance was dropped, but I'll tell you later on. Rockeye has a lot of it's a pretty high dud rate. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it's like 10 or 15%. For those that don't know, the Rockeye's a cluster bomb.
Yeah, and that thing is so just going, because we drove through shit later on, and we're in the middle of fucking a Rockeye drop here. And you're just like, fuck, don't blow up the tires, whatever, don't blow us up. So I don't know what the ordinance was there. Me and the lieutenant really never talked about what it looked like when we went back to the OP. I wish we would have just got a picture or something to show that OP, because I don't have any picture. I have one dense picture from that OP.
Really? Yeah, that sucks. It's back nowadays we have video photos of every OP, every base, every whatever, because everybody has a phone and shit. Everybody deploys with electronics and stuff, and it's easier to capture the history than it was then. What was it like? So the ground war itself was only a week long. What was it like having that entire build up months? I mean, you guys got there in August, and it didn't actually
Right.
start until January, like the actual war. So what was it like having this like months and months of build up? Like, hey, we're going against one of the biggest armies in the world. We're being told that they're one of the best armies in the world because they had fought the Iraq-Iran war or something like that.
For like
They had
8 years.
recently fought a war. What's that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
they were fighting Iran for like 8 years,
yeah,
if not
and they
longer.
were. Yeah, so the thought process was that this wasn't going to be a quick and easy war. It was going to be a pretty nasty war. So what was it like for you, like when it ended so quickly?
Well, after Khafji's, like things kind of slowed down for a little bit. We weren't sure what was going to happen. There was still talk about us not going crossing the LOD and anything like that. But when the ground war, I think this war doesn't get a lot of credit because it was done in such a way that we owned it. You know what I mean? Like we had the manpower that we needed there. We had the air power. The Iraqis, for whatever reason, didn't see that coming. And we had so much in the right place at the right time that it looked like it was easy, but it was still some good fights during the ground war.
Sure.
I got a buddy, the Task Force Papa Bear, a buddy of mine. He was AAVs. They were in the big fights with the tanks, one of the biggest tank battles I think since World War II or some shit. So that's something that gets overlooked a lot. Is that's the last truly mechanized war we've had. Where now, like even when we went to OIF in the push in 2003. There wasn't a mech war going to be fought there. It was just going to be more of a counterinsurgency kind of thing. We knew that. Technical vehicles. There's going to be some anti-aircraft shit. But you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
So these guys were doing those battles out there, the Marines. But the Saudis, the Qataris, we were kind of tasked with reserve for the EPAC for, I want to say the Sang was ahead of us. So we would roll up we were basically, this time we're split up. So I got my Humvee with me and a communicator and a corpsman and my driver, and they got the AAV or what they were running with the AMX 10s, but he was on top of that with my Lieutenant McGilvery with my communicator and another guy. So it was like we were split up, but we were in the reserves all the way up until I think the objective 13, 14. It was close to the city, and then they moved them up, and then it was just basically fire, recon by fire kind of thing. Shoot. We'd literally roll past 122 mortar platoon, and those are big fuckers. And you're rolling past them, and they're dug in. And then my doc yells, "Hey, Iraqis!" So we jump out and literally start fucking shooting, trying to get into the berm. And this fucking AMX 10 rolls up, and 10 Qataris jump out, and they lay down a line, and they're we're in between them, and then they just all start firing. We're like, "Fuck it, in the Humvee, man! I'm not getting out of here." It's never get off the boat, But yeah, so. And they went in there and drug out fucking dead bodies that they had just smoked that we had passed. But a lot of people had passed. So it was these guys were just hunkered down, and when they thought they were clear, they're coming back out. Yeah. So it was kind of one of those things. But they did some, and then we got stuck in the city itself. So which was kind of cool, because we actually got to go into the city because we were with EPAC forces. What they did, though, is they stopped us short of the city. So we're in a trash pit. We're in this big old trash dump, man, and there's fucking people could tell you, man, it's pretty. You've seen death, you've seen war, and you've seen it at all different levels. Well, that's what's out there. They were just dragging bodies out there, so you got all types of different decomp going on. We're hearing stories of, hey, they just found three Filipino women or TCNs fucking in one of these bunkers, and they're fucking dead, and they look like they've been probably raped to death and abused and all that. So you had all that shit, but we're standing out in the city. We're staying there. We're like, why are we not going into the city?
What city is this?
Kuwait City.
Oh,
Kuwait
okay,
City.
okay.
So we were outside the outskirts of it, and we're holding fast. And then we get told, okay, hey, you guys are gonna be now switching. They're like, we're taking our toys and going home. Qatari Special Forces is here, and you're gonna attach to them guys. Special Forces. So I think that just meant they spoke better English. Yeah. And they had different camis, but. So we switched up with them, but we're still waiting outside the city. And what we had to wait for was, I kid you not, man, I turn around and I see a parade of BMPs. And they've got the Kuwaiti flag on them. And they're fucking rolling past us. They wanted the Kuwaitis to be the first ones into the city.
Oh, okay.
So
I get that.
They went into the city. Then we followed suit and went through there. There was a lot of collaborators. Yeah. Palestinians that were there that were working and doing labor and whatnot, and then they suddenly turned. So we were capturing those guys. We were going into the city. We had like comm sites. It's hilarious. You go into a comm site in this compound, people are pointing at it and they're like, hey, bad men, bad men. So we fucking go in there, stack up as best we can, and we go in there and clear it all out. And then you come out and you go, all clear. And when you come out of this little fort here, or this little big, like a complex, you're surrounded. You don't even realize it because they were doing that while you were inside it. Come out and it's literally surrounded, and everybody starts firing into it. So it's like crossfires. It was nuts, man. It was just, but so that was crazy too. But we did that for a little while, and then we pulled back. We got pulled away from basically everything was done for the most part. It was just now a matter of mopping up and whatnot. So we pulled back the ANGLICO units, and we all consolidated with our salt outside in an area, and we just basically fucked off for I think a couple of days before we went back south into Saudi Arabia. Was it a letdown? To an extent, it was, in the sense that I'm happy it was. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy it wasn't this. Like, they give us nap pills, and one of the biggest things, gas, right? So we were in our fucking chem suits for I'd say for at least a couple of days. I was in my chemical suit, and then I took it off, and I'm just black as hell from all the charcoal in it. But
yeah. And
then of course all the oil that we had already inhaled and is all over our bodies anyway, because we were soaked in oil. So that was kind of crazy too. But I was happy that we didn't get hit with like chemical warfare. I didn't take my nap pills. I took like 2 of them and I was done. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be an experiment for this. They've already got me shot up and everything else. I'll just do the atropine thing. And it's like legit when you're given your morphine syringes. I don't know if they still give those out or not, but
I never got one.
See, I had a case of 5 of them. They're morphine syringes, and they're in this little hard case, and it's like legit. So you're thinking, fucking, what is it? You do atropine, and then if you're gonna die anyway, just give them fucking morphine. And it's like, well, fuck, there's enough for everybody but one of us. There's 5 of them. We had 6 guys counting in a dock at the time, so it's kind of funny. But it was what we saw, I think, was enough for me at the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you got a taste of it.
Yeah, especially I think Khafji is like a really big part of that was a big part that people didn't know about, and it was done like it was reactive rather than proactive as far as the way we were, the way they were. But yeah, it was a not necessarily a letdown. It was more of a probably like a relief kind of thing.
Yeah.
We didn't have to fucking do that big, because the mother of all battles, and you're going to get gassed. You're going to get it's just going to be the biggest mechanized fight that's ever been, is the way we anticipated it.
Which doesn't end well for anybody.
No, and then you're with Arabs who, they fight a whole different way too. So, and they've gotten better over the time, and they definitely didn't lack courage with the fact that the way they handled Khafji. They just didn't have the tactical sense to do it. Yeah, exactly. So. But yeah, it was a surprise, more or less. I think that's a good word for it.
So when you were, I guess, were you part of the force that came back through Kuwait City and stuff like that when all the Kuwaitis were like celebrating that they had been liberated? So what was that like to be, a service member in a different country, and they're celebrating their, that you guys just freed them from, the Iraqis that had come in and tried to take over their city? What was like can you tell us like what the vibe of it was like, and kind of the feelings that you had as a, did it make you feel like more proud to be there or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's one of the greatest feelings. You did your job, and you freed a country. Almost like with World War II kind of thing, going into France and stuff like that. You can kind of get that feel. Of course, they're a Muslim country, so there's not a whole lot of alcohol being handed out. But there was. We'd had cars literally driving past us, and we're in our Humvee, and we're in the convoy with the Qatari Special Forces guys now, and they're just in other mechanized vehicles, and people driving by, hanging out, handing us candy, like boxes of candy, and and just holding flags, and it was pretty crazy because we stayed there for a little while. We were there for a few days because the celebration was awesome. But the scary part is they like to fire their weapons up in the air. And, But to me, to this day, I still don't. I don't dig that. It's just no. I know. So there was a lot of that. It felt great. I don't think there's a better feeling when you feel like you've accomplished something like that, and you see the gratitude. You see like an old woman who was stuck there, who they were if you had the way they told me was if they had a Kuwaiti flag, if they're caught with a Kuwaiti flag, they would be killed. And so people would carry different colors of their Kuwaiti flag. Like she had green. That was what color she had. Another family member had a different color. So that was their way of like protesting to an extent, like holding out. But she still got that piece of cloth. It looks like this normal piece of cloth, but it's like it meant something. So it was pretty neat. And then some of the things though, you felt it was like legit. You felt like shit because you're like, wow, all the bodies that are out in the trash pits. But then you go into this. We went into a place like a little courtyard, and it's got trash everywhere. And you know how a dead body smells, and you can just smell fucking shit. There's different forms of decomp, and they're just trash everywhere. And there's this swing sitting out in the middle, those yard swings, the lawn swings, but it's just nothing fabric is on it. It's just all metal. And there's fucking car batteries hooked next to it, and they're on a fucking. They got the cables rigged up so that they're on the swing, and you knew what that was. And then you look over in these rooms. And we went in there. I wasn't searching through the trash, but you knew there was dead bodies in there. But we got into 2 rooms, and I swear I wish I would have took my camera, man. It's one of the things I regret because this was pretty neat. Somebody had taken their blood or their shit, and they had written on a wall, and it had an Arab, and like with we see them with the man dress all the way down kind of thing. They did that, and then they had an arrow going here and an arrow coming out this way, and it had like crying and shit. And it had just different things of torture on this wall. And I was like, wow. And they were telling their story because we know for a fact they were getting, I think it was a police station is what it was, but they were getting interrogated and more than likely killed because that's what the bodies smell. And when you're in there at that time, you're not thinking that way. You're not thinking, where's my camera kind of thing. Not, even though like in Khafji, like when we went back in there, I was like, I threw my camera, I think at Bo, and I was like, take my picture real quick. And I'm like this fucking, and you can see the fear in my eyes. I didn't realize it at the time, but yeah, but you're there and you see that shit and you're like, man, so this shit went on for a while, and these guys were, and then we were going and clearing, they had a resistance guys there. I got a Kuwaiti patch. Some guy gave it to me, but it's the Kuwait flag and a shield. And there was a resistance that was there that was formed. Those guys were out there and they were pointing at places, that hey, we heard that they were raping people up in this building. So we go all the way up to the top and like through the stairs. Right. And, you get there and you're going into places that, you see baby cribs and all kinds of shit. And you're like, man, these people just got fucked. Because they destroyed that city, man. It was pretty bad. So, but felt good that they appreciated it. But of course it felt bad that we waited so long. You know what I'm saying? Like,
did it validate, did it make you validate any kind of questions you might have had of why you were there?
Yeah, for me, it was simple. Our government sent us, and that was it. I mean, I was a corporal when I went. I was a sergeant when I got there. I got promoted there. But like nowadays, I say, I came to terms with it. We went there for strategic oil, is my opinion, and I'm fine with that because I understand the need for oil. I understand the need to run our military complex. I mean, I get that, so I'm fine with that. I don't do the slant drilling that Kuwait was doing into Iraq. Did Iraq have did they have a right to do what they did? We probably would have did the same shit if somebody was doing that to us, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Was that proven to be true? Because I know what you're talking about. For people that don't know,
yeah.
Iraq justified their invasion of Kuwait because they were saying that Kuwait, the oil production facilities at Kuwait, they were drilling down and not getting enough oil, so they were drilling down and then slanting across, and the whatever you want to call it, the oil wells were going at an angle under the border into Iraq, into the Iraqi oil reserves and pulling their oil. I know that was an accusation, but I don't know. And I remember reading about it, and I honestly don't know that much about it other than it happened. But I don't know if it was ever proven that was true other than the Iraqi saying it.
I don't know. I heard also, and I think you're probably more spun up on it than I am, but Iraq had a very big debt they owed to the Kuwaitis. And that was one way not to pay them off. And, because we backed Iraq during the Iranian war. I mean, with them. Iraq was like, it used to be, I think it was like the Europe of the Middle East. They could go there, party, and, the alcohol. It was like just like a regular country. It wasn't held down by the hardcore Muslims or anything like that, is the way I understood it. So I don't know what the reasoning was. But then, again, I just did, as long as I'm not doing anything crazy like against the Geneva Convention, I'm good to go. I'll go fight a war for whatever my country sends me for. one of the disappointments was that, and one of the things I really want to thank the guys out there that have re-enlisted or have enlisted and re-enlisted since 2001, is I joined in the peacetime time frame. 85, 84 was nothing. What kind of steered me, I was really big at, I told you why I joined the Marine Corps, because I almost joined the Army, but I remember when the Beirut bombings happened in 83. I mean, I was a sophomore. I went from like the US Festival in 83 in Glen Helen to hearing about the bombings in October that year, so it's two different types of things, but it's like, I lost my train of thought, brother. I'm sorry, man.
Oh, no, you were just saying how you joined during peacetime, but...
during peacetime, yeah. So, it took me, 6 years to see my first armed conflict. We had the embargoes, I think, the Gulf where they were shooting at Iraqis. Iraqis were shooting, or somebody was shooting at our Iranians might have been shooting at our tankers or shit like that. I remember that, Kuwaiti flagships and stuff. But it took me 6 years to see my first shot fired in anger, kind of thing. And now, and do I want to give accolades to everybody else? Is 2001 on is y'all fuckers joined knowing for a fact you were going to war, and it wasn't a pleasant war, because I know when I was there, I was only there for the 6 months, the initial push. But after that, the counterinsurgency happened, and that's when all that shit broke loose. And then you guys, Afghanistan became a bigger focus as well. And so I appreciate you guys that carried on the tradition, but the guys that are just doing the do today. When you hear guys talking about, I did like 5 deployments, and I'm like, fuck, dude, that's enough, man. Then you hear them go, I did like 3 deployments, and they're playing it off like I only did 3, and I'm like, yeah, you're out of your fucking mind, dude. I get it, but
yeah, I mean, it's when I guess when you're on the other side, I don't know. I've done 5, but only 2 MEUs and 3 to different combat zones. But it's I don't hold my service or anything I did is nowhere near like the guys that, from 03 to 07, 08, Iraq, like that real tough time in Iraq. I can't imagine anything I did was ever as bad as what some of those guys had to go through in Iraq. Cause those were some, there was some straight up fucking legit fighting going on during the initial parts of OIF. After the invasion was done, the invasion was quick. And we're like, yeah, this is great. And then when the cities kind of fell apart and we made a lot of bad, political decisions and stuff like that, like automatically denying any work to anyone that was part of the Ba'ath Party, even though it was one of those things where like you had to join the party or you're going to get tortured and killed, like all that kind of stuff messed it up and started the insurgency. I mean, like I always tell people, and I appreciate the sentiment, I do, and you're correct. Like I said, those guys that went through like Fallujah 1, Fallujah 2, and Ramadi and stuff, I just can't imagine what it was like. Sergeant Major Offutt has come on the show a couple times and talked about some of the stuff that he did over there, and there's just nothing I've ever done that's ever compared to that. And I always tell people, like, it doesn't matter though, because I've done more than some people, and I've done way less than a lot of people. Like we've all done more than someone, we've all done way less than someone, and judging your service based off of what someone else did is a horrible idea for anyone to do. And I do like coming back and talking to guys like you and other people. I had my dad on the show. I had Garcia on the show, and they talk about the Gulf War, because you're right. I think the Gulf War, because of the quickness of the ground war, has caused a lot of things like Khafji, and other events that are, major events in people's lives and in the history of the Marine Corps to be kind of, well, the war only lasted a week. How bad could it have been? And that's obviously not the case. And, and people forget about some of the stuff that you guys did, not just the combat. I like that you brought up the, having the oil on your uniform and stuff like that. I actually have a photo over on the shelf of my dad getting an award. Him and my mom actually gave a guy CPR at the reserve center that he worked at. They were playing basketball. I remember I was there when all this happened. They were playing pickup basketball, and one of the reserve soldiers started having a heart attack. And my mom worked as a nurse's assistant, like a CNA, and my dad was in the Army, obviously. And we pulled up with my mom at the same time all this was happening, and my dad started doing CPR on the guy. And I think he like threw up in his mouth, which I guess is a common thing when you're doing CPR or people are having heart attacks or something like that. And then my mom took over. Anyway, long story short, my dad ended up getting an award for that from the Army for, doing CPR on this guy and saving his life. He lived. And I have a picture he actually didn't get the award until they were over in the Gulf War. So the photo looks like it's taken at nighttime, but it's actually during the daytime, but it's all black and smoke because of the oil fires. And what I've seen Jarhead, I know a lot of people have seen Jarhead. How do you think that is an accurate way of depicting the oil fires? Not the combat or anything like that, but the actual oil fires and stuff like that? Because I've never really seen anything that can depict it the way that you guys probably saw it.
No, I think they did a good job with that. It's something that I don't know how you replicate it, to be honest with you, though, without actually doing it, because there was so many fires, and like you said, it did look like night. You didn't see the sky, and it was just, but I think it gave it a whole different dynamic to the battle too, because it was just the background in itself. You know what I mean? It's just black, and to try to, I don't know, like battle. Being in a battle is black. It's not a fucking sunny day kind of thing. So it was legit. You don't realize it though, how bad it is on you, and until we got done. Because it's just like getting a tan over time. You're just getting darker and darker. You know what I'm saying? And then I remember going back in the day. The big thing was spreadables. They had just come out, I think. Spreadables. Mm-hmm. So we were eating MREs, we were eating goat ass because we were with the Sudanese were cooking for us, which was awesome when they made chicken. But I'll tell you what, so I go back we do a run back, and this is after everything's said and done, to the PX, like to a mobile PX, and buying spreadables in the sky. I remember it was me and a couple other guys, and he's like, "Hey, can I take a picture of you guys?" I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead." And so he takes a picture of us, and then I look over at Butchie, or I think it was Butchie with me, and then there was another guy, I don't know who the other guy was, and look at us. I'm like, holy shit, man! Look how dark we are. Because you realize how filthy you are, but the oil is just. Yeah, I think that was pretty wild, man. And
just sitting out there getting coated in it slowly and slowly. My generation talks a lot about the burn pits and the effects of the burn pits on us and stuff like that. How do you think those oil fires and breathing in that smoke and shit all day do you feel like you've had any negative effects from that, or is there anything that's like documented from that?
No. So when we came back, we had to fill out a thing because Gulf War syndrome became a big deal, right? So I've had buddies that I think have gotten Gulf War syndrome, and it may have been diagnosed as something else, and I think it was from a combination of certain things, be it the oil fires, be it driving through after an A-10 strike where you're doing fucking depleted uraniums all around you, and you're on foot picking up dust, and you're running into bunkers that were hit by it, so you're at head level with the dust, and you know what I'm saying? It's not like the dust is at your feet. It's how a trench looks. So when you're running through a trench and all that dust is blowing, so I think that is one of my things I had when I came back. I couldn't explain it for the longest time. I was getting these I just be talking to my wife, and all of a sudden I just dropped, and it was like somebody took an ice pick and jammed me in my freaking liver back here. It's just boom. And so I started going to the doc on them. I'm like, hey, I need this looked at. So they did the dyes, no kidney stones, nothing like that. They just never figured it out, and it just went away on its own. But so when you fill out your thing on the Gulf War syndrome and stuff like that, I don't have Gulf War syndrome, but they keep tabs on it. Like the VAV will send me stuff about, hey, Gulf War syndrome, this is the newest and latest thing like that. But no, I don't have anything what I consider residuals from it. My wife might tell you I'm crazy, but I was that before I left. So, but so it's I don't know. I know there's people getting sick from it, just like you guys talk with your burn pits, because there's nothing healthy about being out there and inhaling oil 24/7 for a few days. I mean, as long as we were out there. And I don't really know how long we were out there, because we were out there after it all said and done too. And those oil fires didn't get put out for years.
Yeah, some of them it took. I remember being a kid, so I was elementary school, maybe 93, so I was not even 10 years old. Or 91, I think is when the war was. So I was like 8 years old, and I remember seeing on the news even then them talking about the oil fires and the impact, and that it could take many years to get all the oil fires out, and they had all these like specialty companies going out there trying to figure it out. And I think it was around the same time I saw some movie with John Wayne in it where he puts out some oil fire with explosives.
Hellfire.
And it was like,
Hellfires?
I don't remember what it was called, but I was a kid. That's like the only John Wayne movie I've seen other than his war movies. Like I was saying at the beginning, I grew up watching war movies. The only John Wayne things I know are Green Berets, like Sans Iwo Jima, stuff like that. I don't know any of the Western stuff, but I remember that movie coming out because I remember it was a big deal, obviously, at the same time that the that movie didn't come out; it had already been out forever. But those oil fires and how they were going to put it out. But man, yeah, that's crazy that they even did that. That Saddam Hussein like lit those on fire, and it's the detriment to. I don't know. I don't know, man. It was just such a bad deal for the earth and shit like that. I can't believe someone would.
The EPA would have his ass.
Right.
We should send him to California. He'd have really got tortured.
For sure, man.
Yeah,
it's
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that was I might have misspoken. I didn't know if it took years for that, but I know like the cleanup itself, like with the animals affected and the oil in the Gulf, they were talking about that for years. So I'm not sure how long the fires actually took.
It took a while though. I do remember all that, but we're at almost 2.5 hours. So I think I'm gonna cut it here. If there's any kind of organizations or anything that you want to give a shout out to, or if you want to put your own social media out there, feel free to do that at this time. Or if there's anything else you want to add into the stories that we've already talked about, go ahead.
No,
I'd like to have you come back on later on, and we'll go through some more of your career as well.
All right on. I just say that we're doing a 30-year ANGLICO reunion next September 9th to the 13th, and it's basically the Desert Storm era. What we're trying to do is get the between 1988 to 2003 timeframe, because they were there for the deactivation, they were there for the reactivation kind of thing, and you know how we were getting the Southwest Asia Service Medal for quite a while after the Gulf. So we're doing that. So I have a GoFundMe up there for people that are, if they're not attending, if they'd like to just donate or have a family friend that is into the military and wants to donate something like that, they can look. If they just go to Facebook, they'll see it. If they look up GoFundMe for ANGLICO reunion or something like that. But I don't belong to any real organizations aside from the VFW, and that's it. And our VFW out here is, and the Elks, but the VFW out here is really slow.
It happens.
So,
yeah. If you want, send me the link for that GoFundMe, and I'll put it in the show notes. That way, people can just check the show notes and go right to it. So
okay, yeah, and if I'm sure I'll come up. There's some things that, there was some things in that happened during the Gulf that don't get talked about a whole lot either. I think that I can probably come up with next time, because we had some guys doing some really good stuff over there. It's just they got some good stories to tell, and I'm hoping that just hearing it today, 'cause I had my committee out here. I know you're ready to go, but I had my committee out here, and we sat around, and it's kind of like I listened to your podcast, and I got to tell you, you're doing a great job, because it's just like sitting at my table with beers in our hands, just shooting the shit. It's not, nobody's doing this. No, there's no braggarts. There's shit you hear that you haven't thought of in a while. You kind of trigger something, then you remember something else, and I think that's good medicine. It's good mind medicine.
For sure.
The more we talk about it, and I think it's more the more we talk about it with the guys that have been through stuff like that, I think the better off we are going to be.
100%.
So I hope it opens the way for the guys that I've sent you names to, that they'll hear it and they'll say, hey, you know what, that wasn't too bad, and I'll tell my story and stuff, because these guys got some incredible stories. I was happy to be there. You know what I mean? So
yeah. No, I appreciate the kind words for the podcast. I think I've had a few people reach out to me and say that they like the podcast because, like you said, it's like a couple dudes just bullshitting and stuff like that. And it's not no one's bragging. It's not braggadocious. We're not telling like crazy stories. And for guys that are out, and it's for people that listen to this that are still in, it's going to be hard for you to understand until you get out. But for guys that are out, you kind of feel alone. You go back to your hometown, or you go back to somewhere, and all the people you knew and the lifestyle you knew for the last 4 years or 20 years or however long it was is now gone, and you're back in the real world. And I think it's easy for us to look at the people in the real world and say that they don't understand us, and it's hard to I don't know, it's just hard to talk about some of the stuff like that, and you really don't have anyone to talk to unless you move near someone that you knew in the military or something like that. And I've had guys reach out to me and say that they like listening to the stories because it reminds them of stuff that they did in the military, and it also lets them, I've had one guy specifically told me that it made him want to talk about his service more, and which is something I always tell guys. Again, like you said, we're not bragging about it, but I think people should be able to tell what their service was like and what they did, and for a couple reasons. One, I think it's our duty to inform the public of what's going on in the military and how, what does it actually mean to join the Marine Corps, and what does it actually mean to go to a combat zone. This isn't World War II. This isn't Vietnam, where people are being drafted and a large percentage of the U.S. population is affected by these wars.
Right.
You know, like over 15%. I think it was like Vietnam, like over 15% of the public was drafted or knew someone that was drafted or something like that. And we're at a point now where an all volunteer force, which is great, which it should be. I'm not saying we should be back to the draft. However, the buy-in from the general public is no longer there. And now the knowledge of what's happening is also not there. They don't really understand. I bet if you talk to a lot of people, they wouldn't realize that there's still people fighting right now in Afghanistan. There's people over there getting killed and fighting, you know, right now. So that's one reason I think it's important to get the stories out and for people, average citizens, to actually understand, one, what the military does, two, also that the military is not just a combat force. Like a majority of the things that overwhelming majority of the things that the military does is not combat. You know, we send people to go to Haiti to go help people during an earthquake or rescue our own citizens during hurricanes and stuff like that. So the ignorance of the military is there, and I think this podcast helps hopefully to quell some of that, you know, to make people understand better. Two, for people like you, for people like me, or anyone else that was in the service, your families ought to know what you did, and they ought to have it straight from the horse's mouth. And now, like for you, this is now recorded, and then your great grandkids will be able to get on the internet, or whatever the internet is then, and be able to find this audio file and be like, this is what, you know, my great grandfather did during the war in 1991. Cool. You know, and I wish more people looked at it like that you're not coming on to brag and stuff like that, but you're coming on to share your history and to have it recorded so that it's not misrepresented in the future. So with that, go ahead.
Can I, what I was going to tell you is we talked about that during the committee meeting, is having a living history, like having guys have a video out here and just have guys talk for a little bit and stuff like that. And it is, I just want to say one other thing real fast though. As far as you guys see, my regret when I got out was I didn't make it to Afghanistan. And then I did that whole thing where I watched death tolls and battles and all that stuff going on. Right. So, and then all the stuff that still was going on in Iraq, I'm still feeling guilty about that too. But it's your podcast lets us know too, the guys like for me that I was in Iraq, I was Desert Storm in an OIF. I don't have a clue as to what Afghanistan is like. So I listen to your guys' podcast and it brings it up real. It's legit, real. Like even listen to that last one with the major. You know, I was like, 3-5 and saying, and that's like, it's awesome to hear. Yeah. And I love that mentality too about what he said, as far as it's not about how many guys we got. We're not victims. It's how many guys we punched in the face. Yeah. That needs to be spoken about. And I love hearing that your podcast does that for me when I take my walks and whatnot. I know it does it for a lot of guys. So I think keep it up, man. And I'd love to come back and finish up and tell you some funny stories about the drill field and maybe some shit that's illegal, but it's.
Hey, you're out now. It's all right. It's it's for sure, man. We'll definitely set up. We'll have to have you come on for a couple more because I doubt we'll get everything else in the second one anyway. So, for everyone listening, make sure to check out my website, jkramergraphics.com. My Instagram's @formeractionguys and @jkramergraphics on Instagram. Yeah, man. Like I said before, thanks again for coming on, and I look forward to the next interview.
Right on, brother. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Have a good day.
You too.